Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Good morning from Lilo. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you guys. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Justin Perri. He does great work over at Chalk Value Bets, taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball. We're going to be chatting with him about all that we have been seeing with regards to these conference tournaments. He was in attendance for the Baha Mar tournament that was involving the St. John's versus Baylor buzzer beater, and we're going to talk with him. How do you observe things when you're in person that maybe you wouldn't be able to pick up upon if you're watching on TV? I think that that's a big aspect, just what he's been making out of these conference tournaments, how difficult they can be to gauge, and we'll take a look at a few games for Wednesday as well. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the Rowdy recap.
Going to do this recap a little bit quicker because we had a lot of TBD games that I had to record on the fly. So that's why my voice is a little bit sore, because we have been doing a lot of handicapping all throughout the day. But that said, we saw a lot of excitement out there in Hawaii. As a matter of fact, this game is finishing up just as I am recording this podcast. As you saw Auburn get the job done 85-72 against North Carolina. G.N.I. Broom was cleaning up. By the end of the first half, he had a double-double, 23 points, 19 rebounds, trio of blocks for Auburn. They win the rebound battle 42-36, and North Carolina shot 6-16 from three-point range, but it just feels like R.J. Davis hasn't been quite the same this far this season. He had just 12 points for this team. Van Allen Lubin came off the bench for 10 points, but Auburn, very easily, they were able to get the job done in that one. Currently, as I'm recording this, Rutgers in overtime is up 84-81 on Notre Dame on a day where, as of right now, Dylan Harper, 35 points, 6 boards, 6 assists. I know that so many people default to Ace Bailey as being really that star for that team, but this man is really introducing himself. He has been tremendous, and what else has been interesting, UConn losing back-to-back games. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone right now. They lose 73-72 as a 2-touchdown favorite against Colorado because they lose a rebound battle 28-26. They win the turnover battle, but Colorado goes 9 of 16 from three-point range. Andre Yagomovsky, double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds. Julian Hammond had 16 points, and the backcourt for UConn, in my opinion, was fine. Solo Ball along with Hassan Diarra, they combined to go 7 of 10 from three-point range, 27 points. Needed a little bit more out of Alex Caravan, though. 6 points, 5 rebounds. He's really the main returner from a season ago. Didn't get a ton out of the bench as well, and for UConn, we saw Danny Hurley once again be very, very animated in this game as well, so nothing new there, but that was a rough one to say the least for UConn. This was a rough one for Duke, 75-72. Kansas really from start to finish led this game. The game was on the fritz a little bit more in the second half, but Kansas goes 8 of 17 from three-point range. The veterans got the job done, and you saw Hunter Dickinson get ejected for a flagrant foul with about 10 minutes remaining in this one, but even with that, team was able to pick it up. Rylan Griffin off the bench was able to give you 8 points, 3 rebounds for Kansas, even with having Dickinson off the floor for quite a while. They win the rebound battle 31-25, and for Cooper Flagg, he's able to do a little bit of everything, 13 points, 5 boards, but did have 4 turnovers in this game, as it's a little bit of sloppier game, 16-16 in terms of the turnover department. Caleb Foster gave the team 6 points, and Con Kneppel did step up with 8 assists in this one, but just 4 of 14 and 0 of 8 from three-point range. So big-time statement sent by number 1 in Kansas, a big-time statement sent as well in this one with Iowa State being able to get 52 points in the second half. They take down Dayton 89-84 in a high-flying game, as for Iowa State, they did a solid job of being able to execute their offense, despite the fact that they didn't generate as many turnovers as they're accustomed to. Dayton did a nice job holding on to the ball. They only turned the ball over about 11 times in this one, as Malachi Smith chipped in there 22 points, 9 assists, but Iowa State, They do a relatively solid job playing even up with regards to offensive rebound battle. Deshaun Jackson, 12 points, 6 rebounds, but Kashawn Gilbert was a guy that really stepped up in this one. As Tamon Lipsby, just 16 minutes in this one. He fouled out of the game very early on, but Curtis Jones, 19 points off the bench, and Gilbert, he was able to supply the team with 24 big ones as well. In terms of some of the other, shall we say, off the beaten path tournaments for Toledo, just an absolute melt job by them. They were up by, at the very minimum, 16 points on Wyoming. Might have been up 18 points. Wyoming gets the job done. This by a count of 64-63. As for Tulane, they were up by a count of 52-38, 13:44 remaining. They scored 11 points in the final 13:44. And being someone that wrote up the over in this game, that made me a little bit less than enthused about that. But for Wyoming, Obi Egbum, hopefully I said that correctly, he was able to give the team a really good just showing in general. He was able to chip in there 18 points. Wyoming goes just 4 of 22 from 3. For Tulane, not much better. They go 4 of 20 from distance as well. But for Tulane, they had pretty much all of their starters scoring double figures, and they got 0 points off the bench. A big giant goose egg, been a problem for Tulane for quite a while. Meanwhile, for Wyoming, coming off the bench, they had a grand total of 30 points, with Tuki Tanamo being one of those guys, hit a big 3 late to be able to uplift Wyoming to victory. So that was a very interesting one. Currently, as I'm recording, you've got Furman in the lead, 58-51 on Seattle as well. That's what's great about this time of year, just wall-to-wall college basketball action. And Samford, they score 50 points in the first half. They're able to do 18 points through 15 minutes through the second half. They pull it out 103-98 against North Dakota State. Colin Holloway, he was able to lift the team to victory of 24 points. And Jakari White, 30 big ones for North Dakota State as well. That was one of the more fun and just carefree games. At Boston College, now 6-1, they're able to take the Cayman Islands Classic, this by a count of 63-61 for Boise State. Good news is Javon Buchanan off the bench, he was able to supply the team with 24 points, but good toughness from Boston College late in this one. They go just 2 of 12 from 3-point range, but off the bench, Joshua Beadle was able to give the team 13 points. Really like what I'm seeing out of this Boston College team. Their main guy, Donald Hand, only had 6 points in this game, so that was a very, very big victory from them, and nice little statement by them. And then in the Alabama versus Houston game, this game goes to overtime, and Alabama gets the job done by a count of 85-80, but behind the fact that you had Musa Diabate be able to give the team 10 points, 16 rebounds, Alabama wins the battle on the glass by a count of 48-39, and had LJ Cryer for the Houston team be able to supply the team with 30 points, but not enough on this night, as it was Alabama who was able to find a way to be able to get the job done. Also being able to find a way to be able to get the job done. Kentucky, not quite the 100 points that we've been seeing all season long for them, and they do not cover the closing line, but they still win by a count of 87-68. A nice game from Austin Carr. He was able to have a double-double, 18 points and rebounds in this one for Western Kentucky. I believe that they were a little bit north of a 23-point underdog in this one, and you were able to get 18 points out of Julius Thedford for the team to be able to remain in there. Hilltoppers, I think, are going to be relatively solid out there in Conference USA, Miley Cyrus's favorite conference, because it is a party out there in Conference USA, and it was a party for Oregon, 80-70. They take down Texas A&M with TJ Bamba being able to supply the team with, in this one, 18 points, and he was able to do a solid job getting to the free throw line. As Oregon, they go 23 of 31 at the charity stripe. They win the turnover battle 13-9. This despite the fact that Texas A&M, they had 21 offensive rebounds in this one, but they just didn't necessarily shoot it well from the floor. Zarique Phelps and Wade Taylor, they had 35 of the team's 70 points. The rest of the guys around them, they just weren't necessarily able to step up. A team that was able to step up, though, San Diego State. Creighton, in their first game without Steve Ashworth, it did not go well. 71-53 the final. Ryan Kalkbrenner in this one, he went 5 of 12 from the floor, 11 points, 5 rebounds. He did have in this game 5 blocks, but needed a bit more out of him. Meanwhile, for San Diego State, BJ Turn It Up Davis, he was able to give the team 18 points. Miles Bird looked relatively rock solid as well. He was able to give the team 16 points as well, so that was a big one for them. And then in terms of just a interesting game in general, the Chicago State versus Drexel game to lead off the day. Drexel was up 35-28 in the first half, and then 91 points in the second half. Feel like me had the under. That one was a little bit brutal. Not loving what I'm seeing out of High Point. They win, but they don't cover 76-73 against a Hampton team that's been getting a lot out of Noah Farrakhan. He was able to give the team 16 points in this one. For Kamani Hamilton, he's able to supply the team with 18 points, 8 rebounds, but certainly for High Point, looking a little bit like a low point if you're betting on them with your bankroll. In Memphis, they're now 6-0. How about a 71-63 win over Michigan State? And feels like Penny Hardaway, though, he did have his team 15-2 last year, and it did not pan out, but feels like he's starting to turn the corner a little bit as a coach. I will try to put the horse before the cart here, but 8 of 23 from three-point range. Memphis playing better defense. They're turning the ball over less as they won the turnover battle 13-9. And for Michigan State, Chase Richardson off the bench, 18 points, but the Michigan State team that's currently shooting less than 25% from three-point range, so they're going to need to pick that up a little bit. You saw out there at the Cayman Islands as well, South Dakota State with Oscar Clough giving the team 20 points, 12 rebounds, 75-55 winners over Missouri State. Nice statement win out there. And then you had this as a relatively good statement as well, as you had St. Francis, Pennsylvania be able to rise up 88-78 the final. I think that one of our good friends out there, and Adam, he's going to be sending me a St. Francis of Pennsylvania beer to try one of these days. So we will need to relay that when that does come in. But this also came in. Grand Canyon, 78-71 winners over Samford. Samford got a nice performance out of Maximine Raydon, 29 points, 11 rebounds, but a little bit too little in this case for Samford as they went just 4 of 22 from three-point range. Grand Canyon, they were able to have pretty much all of their starters, aside from Ty and Grant Foster, be able to put up double figures. They won the turnover battle 13-12. They lose the rebound battle, but they did a nice job going 5 of 12 from three to be able to get the job done out there. And if you're looking at the trends that we're seeing in college basketball, I have to call it a little bit short in terms of recap just because of all the last second on the fly games. I had to handicap relatively 50-50 split in terms of overs and unders, 173 overs, 178 unders over the last 7 days. And over the last 7 days, favorites have just gotten slaughtered. 159, 193, and 3 against the spread. If you're looking overall at what we've been getting this season in college basketball, it's been a rough one for favorites, and it's been a great one for underdogs. Underdogs hitting at 52.4%, 533, 484, and 13 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs still a small lead on unders, 511 overs to 504 unders. So that's what we're seeing right now in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Now let's take a look at what we've been seeing in general in college basketball and just some of the variants and the differences that you see in terms of being able to see a game live versus seeing a game on TV. We'll look at some Wednesday games as well, as we'll have a nice wide-ranging chat with Justin Perri of Chalk Quality Bets next right here on Cuts Cuts Eats with myself, Canisius Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cuts Cuts Eats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Justin Perri, who does such amazing work over at Chalk Quality Bets, taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball that we all know and love. I know that he, much like myself, is very much feasting on Feast Week and all that we are getting with this 100 million billion game slate of basketball where we get 16 hours a day of it. It's so much fun. He does such an incredible job also with the Justin Perri Show, which I was proud enough to be a part of a few weeks ago, so that was a good time there. I know that he was doing his Park Walk bets as well. We shall see if there's going to be a little bit of a return there, but Justin, he's all over the place. He's doing such amazing work over at Action Network as well, and you're able to follow him on Twitter/X and his first and last name, Justin Perri, spelled Perri on that last name, and then the number 8 altogether. And Justin, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Man, Greg, a lot of hats in my head these days, but yeah, it's a lot going on. It's a lot of fun, and Feast Week is the best time to enjoy it. I just got back from Baha Mar Hoops, which was a great multi-team event out in the Bahamas at the Baha Mar Hyatt Inn over there. Got to see Tennessee, Baylor, and of course, Virginia, and my favorite team, St. John's. A lot of fun. I thought it was just a really well-organized event. Got to, get up close and personal, rub elbows with the teams, walking around the hotel. So if that's your type of thing, you like to combine a little vacation with college basketball, cannot recommend Baha Mar enough, especially on the East Coast where, it was just a 3-hour flight. It's really not so bad from New York for me. So it was a lot of fun and got to see some really good teams up close and personal.
Yeah, that's a shorter flight than I have from going from lovely Las Vegas to Wisconsin. So that's actually not too bad at all. And just what did you see at that multi-team event? Because you talked about all the games that you saw. I know that you were there courtside for that crazy Baylor versus St. John's game, where that's going to be a game that we remember for a very long time. There are always those games where they are the commercials, like when Wofford hit that 3 for Indiana against Kentucky, that Dickie V call lives on for a long time. I feel like CBS Sports in general has things that they're going to be able to air for a decade, because it felt like every game this weekend that they aired was in the college basketball twilight zone where you had no idea what was going to go on. But that said, over there at Baha Mar, what did you see? And were there any teams in particular that you felt a little bit more stock up or stock down on?
I mean, yeah, getting to experience that game in particular, feet on the wood, like having to move out of the way. It was something that I'll definitely never forget. I mean, definitely one of those all-time games, probably the number one game of this current season right now in terms of excitement, the comeback, the finish, then the level of scoring, overtime. I don't think you can ask for much else except for, if it was my favorite team that hit the game winner. So I'll try to be as objectively appreciative of seeing what I saw. It was magical. I thought that St. John's team looked great. I think they were just a little bit, I don't know, troubled maybe by discipline, not sort of being fully cohesive yet, maybe a little bit of frustration. I think, Rick Pitino asks a lot of his players, and that's a good thing. And he scheduled a very tough week. I was at the Pitino Bowl a week ago Sunday, which is, 10, 11 days ago now, against New Mexico at Madison Square Garden. And I watched them in that game, and they struggled a little bit, and they closed out really strong. They looked good. They covered the spread, did what they needed to do. And then, we all, me included, flew out to the Bahamas, and they did cover that Baylor game. They were 2.5-point dogs. So they covered even if they lost. And it was supposed to be a good game. Baylor's a good team. Like, that's not a horrendous loss by 1 point in overtime. That's a very good team that they played very well against. So I wasn't super disappointed. I thought the offense looked fiery. Continue to believe that, R.J. Lewis Jr. is going to be one of the top 10, if not 5 best players in the Big East. And that, honestly, I think this lineup is probably one of the deepest in the Big East. Like, obviously, there's bigger questions about UConn today than there were, 24, 48 hours ago, 72 hours ago, depending on when you're listening to the podcast. But obviously, St. John's is pretty legit. And that starting 5 with Davon Smith and Kadari Richmond and Aaron Scott from North Texas coming in, and he's tall and can shoot and gets blocks. And Zuby Ejiofor is looking good. Like, he's going to be a problem inside. He battled against the bigs of Virginia and Baylor and looked good. I was really impressed. And, Kadari Richmond, who is the guy on that team, has not played like it. So when he starts looking like that, and you got that backcourt with RJ Lewis and Smith, who's like, the highlight reel bunny block that I was right next to, that man was like 4.5 feet in the air. I swear. He's got like a 40-inch vertical. St. John's looks really good. Stock up for me on St. John's, and stock up, honestly, on Tennessee. And the shooting is nasty. The defense is ridiculous. The size is crazy. The size off the bench is strong. Milicic, they have Phillips. This is not a small team. And then, Zakai is really good. And I mean, we saw a guy go 7 of 10. I forget his name, but they knock him down. So I'm definitely in on Tennessee. I'm a little concerned about Baylor. I think they got a little lucky to get back in that game. I'm a little concerned about Omier. I don't love that fit. I love his game. I think, he's got to do a little bit more passing. He's plenty of time to figure it out. But when you have the support of like Roach and Edgecombe, you have to be kicking it out off the penetration and not taking bad looks under the rim. He does that a lot. But it was great. And Virginia, of course, a little weak. And I faded it. And I think I got my Manhattan plus 17 home. So that's pretty good.
You did.
Yeah. So there you go. You learn a lot. And so, yeah, I'm in on St. John's. I think probably, a good spot to buy low on them here. Probably going to crush Harvard in 3 or 4 days at, I think, Madison Square Garden. I'm probably going to try to go to that. I'm probably going to bet on St. John's. They should dominate. They probably got a little bit of the tough end of the stick in terms of what they saw. And also the losing to Georgia, where, they shot 2 of like 17 or 2 of 19 from deep, which I think is just Aaron Scott's legs not being underneath him for 4 games in 7 days, which is a lot for St. John's. So I like them off the rest to feel good back home and beat a team like Harvard kind of bad. So looking to back them, looking to back Tennessee. Really liked what I saw. Probably 2 teams that make, 3 teams even that can make it run in March.
And here's a big question that I have for you, because you're such a great analytics guy over there at Shot Quality Bets, as we do have Justin Perri joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and you do a great job running the numbers. Just how different is it being in person, you were right there in the front row for those games, but observing those games versus watching them on TV and watching them through things like Shot Quality Bets, your great software over there, because I just think that there are certain things that you're able to pick up when you're in person. And I'm sure that you agree with me. We all wish that we could be in person for every one of these games, but with 364 D1 teams and travel being the way that it is and how much it takes out of you for travel, it's just impossible to do. But just how different is it being in person for a game and being able to pick up on some of those little things rather than watching it on TV, rather than reading box scores, what have you, because I think it's just a different element and you're able to gauge a team so differently when you see them in person.
Oh, yeah. I think the very, very maybe simple answer that maybe you're not even going to think of, it's just their personalities, the human element, the chemistry, how the players actually play, the way, you connect the dots. It's almost like the face to the name in a sense, right? Where the name in this comparison is, or in this metaphor, is the scores that you get, what you read out after, or even on TV potentially, especially with TV. You don't see every moment. TV is one view through a forced angle, and you cut away from the teams when they go to timeouts, and and they look at a specific player when something's happening with them and not the whole arena or the coach. I think you can feel the energy, and you get that even if you're not up close and personal. I definitely think it does come up a little bit more when you're literally right there and you can see how they're shrugging, and you can there's a lot less distraction, and they're almost bigger in your mental picture. You get a sense of how they're feeling almost, which is kind of crazy. Usually you're just kind of going off of the way things look on the screen, or the way that the scores come in, or the way shot quality says the game should be going. And, I'm not necessarily sure that's predictive. I've never tested whether the human elements that I pick up watching a game are predictive. I tend to think that they're not, but mostly because we don't have a decent way to truly analyze them. And while, the value of data is often missed in terms of deriving it from the stability. Can you sometimes get a feel for a game and watch it? Sure. And get it right and be like, oh, they're dominating. They're playing so good, but they're missing, and they feel so good and they're confident, and I can tell that they're going to pick it up. Yeah, maybe. But how are you going to consistently analyze that and gauge your edge and truly refine your process? It's a lot of, human element. Or are you bringing the GRP spreadsheets to the game to write everything down? Maybe that's your vibe and maybe that works. But again, I can run statistical analysis on the data that we have on box results, and they come out the same way and are processed the same way. And there's a lot to be gained from that experimental environment where you can actually recreate results and trust your conclusions. So, yeah. You can have a lot of fun going to a game and feeling it out and being like, oh, this team's, this guy's acting up a little bit and he might have to sit and his attitude isn't great. Oh, this guy's getting rattled at the rim and missing free throws. And what does it mean down the road? And a big free throw was missed by St. John's by someone who was missing free throws. So there's something to be said. But, for me, as someone who obviously can't watch a million games and can't go to person in them all, I think in terms of creating replicable edges and learning how to become sharp from what data you can truly access, it's not viable. It's just fun. It was great. I'm already looking forward to going back.
Oh, absolutely. And if you are using the GRP sheets, do not go to Outback Steakhouse if you have all of your money riding on comeback player of the year. That typically does not go well. We love you, GRP, but we need to get you at the Texas Roadhouse rather than Outback Steakhouse, because that's where it truly went wrong there. And I know that Justin Perri was doing it right, as he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. But that said, it's always so interesting to be able to take a look at those tournaments. And just when it comes to gauging these non-conference tournaments as well, you were in attendance for one. How different is it to be able to handicap these games? Because I've found it with myself. Over the last few years, these are some of the most frustrating games to bet. They're some of the most fun games to watch. But in terms of handicapping them, it just feels like there's more elements than you find in your normal run-the-mill, even non-conference game, conference game. You know what to expect. Meanwhile, it just feels like there's more haywire craziness that happens in these non-conference tournaments, and just a lot more elements at play with guys that might be spending a little bit too much time on the beach the day before.
Oh, I mean, yeah, defense. Not so much defense. And we're seeing it, I think, with some of the shot quality stuff. You can't really trust teams to slow down. They're just not doing it, really. And tonight I took, I think, a Samford under live. And I would not be surprised here as I scroll through.
Samford went from 50 points in the first half of that game, by the way, against North Dakota State through the first 15 minutes of that second half as we are observing. They had scored just 18 points. They slowed down to a crawl, and that North Dakota State defense really picked it up.
That's exactly the type of thing that you look for, but it hasn't really come home as much in some of these free-flowing, especially like the destination games, Greg. I think that's maybe where things change. You just have such a different atmosphere. I think there's something to be said for like how these small environments contribute to like comebacks, or maybe it not feeling super real, or maybe the sight lines being easier or not as intimidating. And it feels like to me that there's a lot of points, there's a lot of comebacks. Like, looking at Maui, you don't want to be the team that's leading with 10 minutes left. Everyone seems to be blowing leads. All the leads at least seem to be getting smaller. I think a big part of it is you don't have teams necessarily playing in some of these big tournaments, especially where there's good competition. They just want to win, right? They're treating it as tune-ups. Maybe they're testing lineups at worst, but they're playing for the win at most likely. So I think when that happens, you do end up getting a lot of comebacks, and you end up getting a lot of closing game scenarios. And it's, a little bit different than what you're going to see in the non-con, where, teams are going to probably try to close out, care about win margin just later in the year. So it's a little bit easier to sort of predict how everything's going to finish. But there's a very, very big lack of predictability. I think it's been tough for a lot of people to get things right. A lot of melts, blown leads. It's just a different brand of basketball than what you're going to see in 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, it certainly is. And I've found this it feels like every year, these non-conference tournaments, there's a lot of wonkiness. And then once you get past this period, you're able to get that nice data set, and then you're able to be taking off and running from there, as Justin Perri does such great work over at Shot Quality Bets. Joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And in terms of the slate for Wednesday, is there anything that's really catching your eye? We're doing this as openers are coming out right now. As we know, there's going to be quite a few games that are going to be off the board until the AM, because a lot of books, they don't want to post up a line until the previous game ends, and got a lot of teams that are playing back-to-backs, what have you. But anything that's really catching your attention that you're going to be looking for Wednesday?
Ooh, give me Louisville right off the bat. Not ranked, going into the ranked opponent, Indiana here. I'm not your biggest AP poll guy, Greg. I don't think anyone who truly follows the sport looks at it as a true ranking of the best teams. It has a lot more to do with who's won recently, and that's fine.
Oh, let me throw this in here. If you're ever a fan of Drew Carey and the line, whose line is it anyway? Great example here. Everything is made up with the AP poll, and the points don't matter.
Right. And again, you're talking about asking a bunch of people who do their jobs very well, which is they cover individual teams, and then you ask them, hey, can you rank everybody? It's tough because they're not watching every game. It's hard to watch every game. You and I can't watch every game, and it's our full-time job to bet on all 360 teams. At some level, you have to expect an accuracy. It's not predictive, and there are still definitely people who see the number next to the team and want to bet the team with the little number. And more so, you definitely can have books that shade things, people, it just even a half of a point, 1 point long term, I'll take that, right? Give me it, especially if I can find an edge on a team like I know I have with Louisville, who rates as currently one of the top teams in shot quality right now. So this isn't just coming out of, I want to fade the team here that has the little number. It's a little bit deeper than that for me. I love what we do here over at Shot Quality. Louisville ranks currently 6th in the nation. Indiana, not 6th. I'll tell you that much. If you look up Indiana right now for us, in the standings. I think they currently rank 99th. They've struggled in terms of taking too many mid-range shots. They're very lucky. A 4-0 record right now, expected to be 2-2 per shot quality. Only a 36% chance to beat UNC Greensboro, expected to lose by 4, and South Carolina only expected to win that game by 1 point at home. So getting some very lucky shot making. Definitely running some decent offense, but they're getting lucky, shooting 35%. Opponents only shooting 27% against them from deep. Louisville's going to come in. They are a potent offense. They can win this game. I think that is a nice way to start off a fun Wednesday of college hoops.
Oh, that is going to be a fun Wednesday as well. That Oklahoma versus Providence game is going to be fun. The return of Bryce Hopkins, but how close 100% is he going to be? Have we went a little bit too far there? Oklahoma minus 2.5.
I heard Hopkins playing. I have a friend, I think, who's there. Sounds like no Hopkins this week for Providence College. Shaking my head is the report I got today at 3:30. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't suit up.
Which that's even better, because I know that they were saying that he was relatively close. They were anticipating perhaps a debut here, and if not, that's all the better, because we were hearing reports about that. And personally, I thought that if he were to return, who knows what form of Bryce Hopkins you're going to get as well. Is he going to be 100%? Is he going to be 50%? So there's a lot of question marks, not just whether or not he plays or not, but how close to 100% he's going to be. And I would land on not 100%. So that makes me 100% liking Oklahoma, but I 110% love getting you on this show, Justin. That's a lot of numbers, and you guys do deal with a lot of numbers over there at Shock Value Bets, and it leads to money in our pockets. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Of course. So I think the best way to get a taste of what we're all about over at Shock Quality Bets is to follow us over on YouTube, our channel at Shock Quality Bets. We do a live show 4 times a week, 7:45 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, and then also Saturday afternoons at 2:45. It's our live betting show where we use our software that grades shots instantaneously and tells you the expected score of a game while it's happening. So we basically use that for 45 minutes every show and make a lot of live bets using it, have a lot of fun, and it's usually pretty sharp. We get teams that come back from big deficits that are just a little cold, and we get good value. So come check it out, see what it's about. You can also follow me on Twitter at Justin Perri 8. Find out a lot of fun stuff that I'm always up to, sharing a bunch of stuff, picks, breakdowns, videos. I do a pick of the day every single day. So, a lot of good stuff. And of course, hopping on a bunch of different great podcasts like yours, Greg. Always appreciate you having me on the show.
And we always appreciate your time, Justin. Justin does such an incredible job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And he makes us smarter every single time he joins this show. So big thanks to Justin for joining me on Cuss Cuss Hoops, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we eat some big shots. When I was asked by Uncommon Goods to do this read, I felt like, man, I am the perfect guy for this one, because with Uncommon Goods, they scour the globe for original, handmade, remarkable things. Somehow, some way, it's going to be perfect, and you're going to be supporting some of the little guys. And why I'm so perfect for it is, for those of you guys that watch everything that I do with my TikTok videos on the old Twitter/X, you'll notice I'm wearing all these low/mid-major college basketball jerseys, and Uncommon Goods, they're sort of like that for all of your goods for this upcoming season. They find you a nice variety of products. They're high quality, they're unique, oftentimes handmade. You're supporting a lot of, shall we say, smaller artists as well, and you're able to just find a home for a lot of different various things that if you're trying to look online thinking, man, where can I find this very unique thing? Uncommon Goods, they're going to be able to find that for you, and you're able to get 15% off your next gift by going to uncommongoods.com/coast. That is uncommongoods.com/coast, COAST. That gives you 15% off. Do not miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Cuss Cuss Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to have Justin Perri aboard. He does such great work over at Shock Quality Bets. every single time he joins me. He lends such great insight. Did so once again today, so that is always very much appreciated. Big thanks to Justin for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. A little bit of a herky-jerk order, I'm not going to lie. It's going to involve the games involving bigger conference teams that aren't involving multi-team events, and then you get things like the Maui Invitational, you get things like the Battle for Atlantis. It pretty much goes in tip time with regards to these tournaments. So first one up will be that Battle for Atlantis, then Maui, and then the Players Era Tournament, Fort Myers, Cancun Challenge, AccuSure, hopefully I said that correctly, and then you get at the bottom the extra games involving teams from the MEAC, the SWAC, the Northeast Conference, the smaller conferences like the Patriot League, Big South. So yep, it is very much harebrained. It is frenetic, so that's why I've got in the show notes the exact order and the time markers when I hit all these games to make it a little bit more easy on you guys. And I actually do listen after the podcast gets uploaded to put these in around like 1, 2 a.m. Pacific time. So I actually do take the time to do that. So let's get things started with a game that is going to be very interesting involving Detroit and Rhode Island, 683, 684 on the betting board. Right now I am seeing one opener, and that is currently at FanDuel and at FanDuel only. And right now it is Rhode Island, an 18.5 point favorite. Total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 147.5, and I'd be willing to take 18.5 with Detroit. Personally, I do not have FanDuel out here in lovely Las Vegas, so I'm still waiting for an opener myself. But that said, would be willing to take anything of 16 or more with Detroit. It's a team that's starting to grow on me a little bit. I like what Coach Montgomery has been able to build here at Detroit. Some of the main holdovers from a season ago, like Mac Manseal, have been able to do a nice job supplying the team with 13.5 points per contest. And for Rhode Island, they're coming off of completely bludgeoning Charleston, and this has been a very good offense thus far this season. Rhode Island currently ranking in the top 30 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. As a collective, they're shooting 37.5% from three-point range, and you've had Sebastian Thomas along with Jaden Ellis be able to play off of one another very well. They're combining for about 32 points per contest. You've had the guys from a season ago like David Fuchs come back, be able to give the team 7 boards per contest, like the pickup that they had of Javonte Brown. He was over there in the MAC last season over at Western Michigan, and he was able to give the team about 4 boards, a block per contest as a true 7-footer, and he has been very good for the team and for Rhode Island. They don't force a lot of steals, but they're better than they were a season ago at it. Last year, they were a bottom 20 team with this regard, and this is a Detroit team that's still pretty sloppy with it. They are turning the ball over about 14.5 times per contest, but you do have Orlando Lovejoy give you 12.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, giving you some good versatility from three-point range. Legend Geeter, he should be able to Geeter done a little bit more on the glass last year. He had closer to about 4 boards per contest and shot 40% from 3 at 6'8". Do think that there's some good versatility here, and been able to get about 5 boards per contest out of Stephen Okoro. Though I think Detroit loses battle on glass, I think that they're able to remain relatively lively, and this is a neutral court game. This is happening out there in the great state of Florida, and this is going to be a noon Eastern time tip, so do think that there's going to be a little bit of grogginess there, but we've seen Rhode Island have a pretty big tempo change, and for this Detroit team, they're looking to run and shoot a little bit more as well, so I did sell my total at 149.5. I'm in on the over, and being able to get an 18.5, I'd be willing to take those points with Detroit. 685, 686 on the betting board. UT San Antonio, meet for the Roadrunners. They are going to be playing against Merrimack, and this is out there in a neutral court as well, and for UTSA, they're an underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. Totals between 138 to 139. Did sell my total at 141.5. I'm going to be in on the over for Merrimack. They're playing quite a bit faster than they have in past seasons, and this is still a supreme team when it comes to being able to generate turnovers, but I do think that you're going to see this Merrimack team have a case where they're going to be able to generate a lot of turnovers on UT San Antonio to get it done. And I like this UT San Antonio team, but they just haven't quite figured it out under Coach Austin Clonch quite yet. I think that's going to take them a little bit of time. And we got a Merrimack team that they just have a little bit more cohesion, because for UTSA, this is very much a team of transfers. They bring in Primo Spears, who's been able to give the team 20.5 points per contest. I like Damari Monsanto, was one of the best spot-up shooters in all of college basketball a few seasons ago. He's back to shooting 39% for 3, giving you 11 points per contest. Down low, you've been able to have Janavia Smith, who comes on over from Buffalo. He's been able to supply the team with 7.5 points, 7.5 boards at 6'9" last season. Did shoot 37% from the outside, but Again, the sloppiness, 14.5 turnovers per game, going against a Merrimack team that was number 1 last year in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Not quite number 1 this season, but they're winning the turnover battle in all their games. They're generating north of 7.5 steals per contest. They're only turning the ball over 10.5 times per contest themselves. Aaron Clark has been able to give you 18.5 points. They need to improve their three-point shooting. They are right now shooting 22.5% from 3, but I do think that against this UTSA team, they're going to be able to do so. And even if it's not against the UTSA, just in general, this should be going northward. Like Malik Eadman last year was out of the fold, but 2 seasons ago, he shot 38.5% from three-point range when he was fully healthy. Right now, he's been able to give the team just 5 points per contest, and he is the only guy that has made more than 1 3 for this team that is shooting above 20.6% from three-point range. Brian Intamino has been able to give you about 4 boards per contest. Sean Trumper has come up from the non-D1 ranks. He's been rock solid, and just with this Merrimack defense, it is a ball of wax. You don't want to be going up against them for this UTSA team. They have allowed at least 77 points in every one of their games this far this season, so I do think that you get things going a little bit more up and down in this one. Sub I total 141.5. I like the over, and with Merrimack willing to lay up to 3 with them, 687, 688 on the betting board. It is Brown, and they're going to be playing us to Stony Brook. What can Brown do for you? Well, you need them to win by at least 9 points to make you money, as they are an 8.5 point favorite. Total this game between 143 to 143.5. Set my line at 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Stony Brook. They're not the same team that they were a season ago. Last year, they were actually your best covered team in all of college basketball, but this is also a Brown team that's not what they were a season ago either, as Kalu Anya, Alandana Wusuanane, they are not there because Wusuanane got hurt in the offseason. Now, we'll say you've had Aaron Cooley along Landon Lewis do a very good job down low. They are combining for about 16.5 rebounds per game, about 25 to 26 points per game between the two of them for a team that shoots overall 35.5% from 3. Keno Lilly Jr., one of the better mid-major scorers they're going to find in all of college basketball. 3.5 assists, 21 points, shooting north of 41% from three-point range, but I do think that CJ Luster and company are going to be able to do a good job here as well. He and Joe Octave have been able to combine for about 27 points per contest. Both Luster, he's been able to shoot 50% from three-point range, and when it comes to the Stony Brook unit, they're not turning the ball over a ton. They're only turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game. Do think that there's some upside with Ben White as well. He comes over after he had a good run of things over at William & Mary a few seasons ago. Last year was just glued to the bench over at Toledo, but I do think that this is a game in which you're going to be able to see this bunch hold in there just because with Stony Brook as well, just have a little bit more depth with them. They've been able to do a pretty solid job on defense. Offense is right now leaving something to be desired, but with Joe Octave being a relatively versatile piece and being able to have Andre Stani do a nice job down low as well. He stands right around 6'6", gives you 6 points, 5 boards, a pair of assists. He's been able to extend his range to be able to pop it from three-point range. I think that they hold in there against a Brown team that, thus far, has been able to do a solid job on the glass. A lot of that is due to the fact that they have faced off against teams that just are not rock solid down low. And for Brown, they've been able to have some nice offensive performances. I believe that they're a little bit more of a defense-oriented team, as you've got a Stony Brook team that they themselves have only been able to break the 70-point plateau once thus far this season against a D1 team. So this is a game where I set Brown as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and did sub my total at 139. I'm in on the under 689, 690 on the betting board. It is Charlotte, and they play OC Tennessee State. ETSU is an underdog of 4 to 5 points, and total this game between 139.5 to 140, and with ETSU, I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points, so being able to get 4+, I'm going to be able to take those points. For Charlotte, they're just not the same team that they were a season ago. Last year, they were a bottom 15 team in terms of total possessions per game, very much built on defense, not necessarily a ton of offense. Now they've been looking to crank things up just a little bit more, and they have been having their ups and downs, to say the least, with it. They bring in Nika Mitska-Rishvili, who really hasn't seen the floor at all this season. He played 5 minutes in that game against Long Island, and he was the main guy over at Louisiana Monroe last season with 12.5 points. A guy that at 6'8" is able to pop in from three-point range. You're just getting him back in the fold, as John Carlos Rosado has had to do a little bit of everything down low. 7.5 boards, 13 points, and he's actually been a really nice point forward with a little bit over 4 assists per game. Not a guy that's going to light you up from three-point range. That's a Charlotte team in general. Charlotte as a whole, they're shooting 31.5% from 3. Robert Braswell is right now shooting 56.5% from 3. Nobody else north of 33% from distance. We should be seeing someone like a Kylan Blackwell, who last season shot 37% from three-point range, rise up a little bit, and certainly Braswell probably not going to continue shooting north of 50% from three-point range, but ETSU consistently one of the better mid-major teams on the glass in all of college basketball. You've got Jaden Seymour along with Karen Boyd, who have been able to combine for 14.5 boards per contest. Seymour is supplying the team with 18 points and is right now shooting 47.5% from three. This for an ETSU team that last year they were well outside the top 300 in terms of their three-point shooting percentage at right around about 31%, and I do think that that's going to crater just a little bit, but love what I'm seeing out of Kamari Peterson for one, great name, and two, 19.5 points, 3 assists, currently shooting 50% from three-point range again. Should be seeing a little bit of a downward tick there, but do like what I'm seeing out of him. You've got Alan Strothers, who doesn't give you a lot of scoring, but gives you some facilitation, and the buggy man, John Buggs III, has been able to give you a little bit from the outside as well. It's an interesting scenario because with Charlotte, they have been seeing quite a dramatic tempo change, but we've also seen them hold 2 of their last 3 opponents to 54 points or fewer. And then for ETSU, it's a team that likes to dominate the glass. They have played up tempo in their last few games, but that was against Queens NC and UNC Upstate. So those are 2 teams that they really look to run it and gun it. I do think that at their core, these are 2 teams that they're still playing a little bit more slowly and want to be able to do so. I think that ETSU wins the battle on the glass. So we'll take the 4 to 5 points here with ETSU, set them as a 3.5 point dog. So I total 137.5. So also in on the under 691, 692 on the betting board. Youngstown St is playing us to Western Michigan. Western Michigan, an underdog of 9.5 points. Set on this game is 142, and for Western Michigan, made them a dog of 8.5 points. So being able to get 9 plus, I'm going to be willing to take them. I just flat out don't think that Youngstown State should be this big of a favorite to too many teams in all of college basketball. This is a Youngstown State team that they are rough to say the least. Jared Calhoun, their coach from a season ago, well, he's no longer there. He is now over at Utah State, and we've got for Western Michigan a lot of versatile pieces for this team. Owen Lobsinger is 6'9". Last year shot 38% from three with about 9.6 boards per contest. This year up to about 11.5 points, 7.5 boards. 3-point shooting is yet to come for him quite yet, but I do think that it's going to be coming around. Now, the issue that you have with Western Michigan, not too much facilitation. Marquise Joseph is right now leading the way with 2.2 assists per contest. He's a guy that's not really seeing starts or anything like that, so you need a little bit more out of the backcourt from guys like Brandon Muntu, who he last year shot 42.5% from three with about 7 points per contest. Hasn't necessarily taken that stride forward this year. For Western Michigan team that they've, despite not having a lot of facilitation, not really turned the ball over a lot. They're only turning the ball over about 9.7 times per game. They bring in a guy like a Donovan Williams, who he was over at Pacific the last 2 seasons. He was logging for them last year about 4.5 boards, 9.5 points. Never been a great 3-point shooter, but does a good job guarding multiple positions, and then Javon Hanna is able to give you about 12 points per contest. Meanwhile, for Youngstown St, I have to like what you're seeing in terms of the versatility of Nico Galletti. Comes on over from Sacred Heart, 14 points, 6 boards, guy that's able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Over at Sacred Heart as well, was really good in terms of being able to generate a block and a steal per game, but this is also a team that doesn't have great facilitation, and they're turning the ball over more than Western Michigan with about 13 turnovers per game, albeit they do a little bit of a better job of being able to generate those turnovers, but don't really love what I'm seeing in terms of facilitation in the backcourt. You've got a guy that comes over from the Atlantic 10 and Jason Nelson. Spent the last 2 years over at Richmond and VCU. Could never really find his footing at either place. Has always been a solid guard, but has not really been a guy that really elevates his respective teams. You've been able to get about 7 points, 5 boards out of Chris Carroll, who at 6'6", is able to give you a little bit of versatility, but has not really been able to pop it from three thus far. And for Youngstown State, they should see a rise in their 25% 3-point shooting, but been a little bit ugly. Youngstown State typically a little bit more of an up-tempo team, but with losing so many pieces from the last few years, their scoring just has not been there. Their defense, honestly, is doing a relatively solid job. They have given up 67 points or fewer in all 3 of their games since a Youngstown State double overtime game. Meanwhile, you've got a Western Michigan team that's looking to run it and gun it, as they have given up 79 plus points in each of their last 3 games. So it's a good old situation of something he's got to give. Did somebody total 144.5. I do think that for Youngstown State, a little bit of a matter of circumstance going against the likes of Stephen F. Austin, Presbyterian, that they saw their scoring dip, but I do think that Western Michigan really looking to play a little bit of a faster tempo, and I do think that this could be a game close enough for late game filling. So looking at the 9+ here with Western Michigan, and I'm in on the over. 693, 694 on the betting board. It is Georgia State, and they're going to be taking on Tulsa. Currently, we've got no numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I set Tulsa as a 1-point favorite and a total of 151. So if Tulsa is laying 1/ a money line underdog, I'm taking them. Anything of +1.5 or more in on Georgia State, and then 150.5 or less in on the over, 151.5 or higher. The under for Tulsa, it's been a very just strange and squirrely year in general for them as they lose their top scorer from last year in PJ Haggerty. For Tulsa, they were able to just absolutely dominate Detroit on Tuesday, but for Tulsa, that was in a game where Detroit went 18 of 65 from the floor. You can't count on Lightning striking twice, but they're now starting to get something out of Isaiah Barnes, who has a 6'7" versatile player. Last year was a starter that gave the team about 8 points, shot 32.5% from three-point range, and Dwan Odom has been a really nice do-it-all sort of piece. Comes on over last year, ironically enough, from Georgia State, so no love lost here. He knows all the trade secrets. He averaged for that team last year 12 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists on 42.5% three-point shooting, so guy that knows how to be able to get the job done. This is a team that they don't necessarily have a ton down low, but they're starting to get a little bit more out of 6'9" Matt Reed, who last year gave the team 4 boards per contest. A little bit slow to get going to start the year, but was able to give the team 7 rebounds yesterday, liking what I'm seeing there. And then on the flip side, you've got a Georgia State team that they're looking to play up-tempo under Jonas Hayes. They just have not necessarily been able to find their bearings on the defensive side of things, as you've got Tunari Lane, who's been able to supply the team with 18 points per game. It's a Georgia State team that, as a whole, they're shooting about 35.5% from three-point range. Lane has been able to be the headliner from the outside, but you've also got Jelani Hamilton, who has come in as a true freshman and has really been good for the team. A little bit north of 10 points per contest, shooting north of 40% from three. Have to wonder if that's a circumstance of a small sample size. And for Georgia State, I do think that they control things down low. Got a pair of guys in Cesar Edwards, Nicholas McMillan, combining for about 16 to 17 rebounds per contest, but also have a unit that they aren't necessarily doing the world's greatest job of being able to hit their free throws late in games, shooting just below 68% at the charity stripe. And they were used to having that do-it-all player in Dwan Odom from a season ago, and they've had to turn 6'7" Zariq Nutter into that, who going into yesterday was doing a nice job of that. 16 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, but I just don't know how long he's able to keep it up. He's not the same three-point shooter that Dwan Odom was, and this is a Georgia State team that yesterday was held to 50 points in that game against Austin Peay as they turned the ball over 17 times. They just don't have that facilitation in the backcourt like they've had in past years. I think that that's what it's going to set Tulsa apart and allow them to get the job done. Both of these teams completely held down yesterday. Both of these teams looking to play much more up-tempo, and I do think that you're going to be seeing that. I did have to make a little bit of an adjustment from where I was at before because I was talking about perhaps a 151 because of what we saw yesterday. I did shade this down to a 149 because it is a back-to-back spot, so now going to be going with a 148.5 or less to the over, 149.5 or higher to the under, but with Tulsa, we'll take them as a money line underdog / 1 to lay up to 1 with them. I think north of 1.5, taking the points with Georgia State as an underdog. 695, 696 on the betting board. It is Air Force, and they play us to Sacramento State. Sac State finds himself as a underdog of 4.5 to 5 points. Totals between 129.5 to a 130. Did set my line at a 3.5, so I'm going to be in on the points. It's a Sacramento State team that certainly is not looking to play super duper up tempo, and either is this Air Force team. And for Sacramento State, I think that they hold in this game just because they're a little bit better on the glass. Air Force is going to be the best team in terms of having that star guy that's able to take it over in Ethan Taylor. Ethan Taylor has been tremendous. 20.5 points, 7.5 boards, 4 assists, shooting 47.5% from three-point range, but double-figure score around him from a season ago. And Bo Becker, he went out after like 10 minutes in that game against North Alabama, has not returned since then. So that's a big issue that the team is going up against. You've also been able to have some good facilitation out of Jeffrey Mills, who's been able to give you 4.5 assists, 8 points per contest. He stepped up as a 6'4", a little bit of a do-it-all sort of guy. I like that you've also been able to get a little bit of size out of Wesley Chikowski. He's a true 7-footer that's been able to give you 10 points per contest, and he's able to shoot it from 3, but as a 7-footer, he's giving you less than 3 rebounds per game. And for Sacramento State, Jacob Holt has been that little bit of a do-it-all guy that has been able to haul in their 5.5 boards, 15.5 points, and they had that last year in Duncan Boom Boom Powell. Even though you had a coaching change in the offseason for Sacramento State, they stayed in-house. So a lot of the same sort of, I guess you call it philosophy from a season ago. It still maintains. You've got E.J. Neal, who he's been able to give this team 38% three-point shooting, 10.5 points per contest. It's a Sacramento State team that is shooting about 36% from the outside. The turnovers have been quite costly, but I do think that they're going to be able to do a little bit of a better job down low. They've got a bit more depth with someone like an Alex Katrasev, who he's at 6'5", able to give you about 5 boards, 8.5 points per game. This Sacramento State team, they do a nice job making things slow and grimy, and they've been one of the best, shall we say, interior defenses in all of college basketball. And for Air Force, over the last 2 seasons, they've actually given up more points per possession at home rather than on the road. Do think that this is going to be a slow bleeder of a game. I think that both of these teams are really going to be struggling to find their footing on offense. And this is an Air Force team that has been able to step up to the plate a little bit more defensively as well. They've given up 67 or fewer in all 3 of their last 5 games. So semi-total 127.5. I like the under, and at 4+, taking those points from Sacramento State. 697, 698 on the betting board. Canisius is going to be on the road facing off against Robert Morris. Old Bobby Morris finds himself as a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. 140.5 to 141 is the total. And for Robert Morris, really set them as a 10.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Canisius. Now, Canisius has been one of the most brutal teams in all of college basketball to start the season. There's no lying about that. And this is a Canisius unit that, well, they lost that game to Maryland by about 70 points about a week or so ago, but they do have a guy in Paul McMillan who's able to take over a game. 20 points, 2 assists, shooting 39.5% from 3. In Canisius, they're shooting 34% from 3. They've also got a nice Robin in terms of the backcourt in Tana Copa. He's a 6'6", little bit of combo player, comes in from Long Island, shooting 43% from 3. 13 points per game, not giving you a lot down low, and that's a big thing for Canisius. You don't have a single guy that's giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and really, other than Cam Polisi, who's been able to give you 4.6 rebounds per game, nobody else that's giving you north of 3.4 boards per game. So Robert Morris with Alvaro Folgueras, who comes over from Spain, 11.5 rebounds per game. They should be able to control that, but here's the issue that you right now have for this Robert Morris team. They've been dealing with an injury to Cam Woods, who 2 seasons ago over at North Carolina A&T, he was a really good 17.5 point per game scorer. He's been missing the last few games, and there's no telling when he's going to be able to come back for this team. He was really offering them a lot in the backcourt, and ever since he's been out, they've been very disjointed with that regard. You've been able to get about 12 points and 5.5 rebounds per game out of a guy that I like in Josh Amajafu, who he's a 6'5" guy that has come in from the non-D1 ranks and has been able to give this team some nice production, but this is a backcourt that's very much depleted. They don't know who they're going to be looking to in terms of facilitation, and it's leading to things getting very sloppy for them. 14 turnovers per contest, and ever since we have seen Cam Woods go out of the fold, they've seen a ascension in their scoring, but that's because of the competition that they're playing. Stony, Lindenwood, and then they play against New Orleans and Cornell, where they were a pop-up for 86 points against Cornell. You got a Canisius team that has been getting bludgeoned on defense, 76+ points surrendered in each of their last 4 games. They've been leaving something to be desired on offense. But again, I do think that things are going to be a little bit sloppier on the offensive end for this Robert Morris team as well with that Cam Woods injury. So I set my total at a 140.5, at a 141 or higher, which we're starting to see 141. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to take those points with Canisius. 699, 700 is a game that's going to be making my write-up as UT Martin is on the road against Tennessee. Tennessee, a 37-point whopper of a favorite, and total on this game is 142.5. Set my line at a 31. I know that some of these bigger spreads have been burning me, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with UT Martin because they do feel a little bit different. For UT Martin, they did a nice job building around, shall we say, the non-D1 ranks and going to the junior college level to be able to get the job done. And for UT Martin, it's been rough for them on offense. They've been turning the ball over north of 12 times per contest. They are well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but also for this UT Martin team, they've been able to do a pretty rock solid job of just being able to hold their own in general, and I do think that they are going to be able to hold in there because their defense is a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Additionally, with this UT Martin team, they did a nice job bringing in Jeremy Schulman, who he knows how to be able to just build on the fly. He was over at East Florida State College, and when you're at the junior college level, you have to work with a whole bunch of different pieces, and he's brought a few guys with him from East Florida State. They've been a top 150 team in terms of their rebound rate as well, so they're actually doing a halfway decent job down low. Jusu Gurion has been able to give you about 18 points per contest, and then they bring in a gentleman from the Big West, and Vladimir Salsirzde. He began his career playing over at Schumann, over at the junior college level, spent the last 2 years at UC Riverside at 6'7". He's been able to do a nice job down low. And for Tennessee, this has been a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I don't think that their 41% three-point shooting is going to be long-lasting. I love what I'm seeing out of Chaz Lanier, shooting north of 50% from 3. Again, should see a little bit of fall off there. Sakai Ziegler has been great at doling out 7.5 assists per game, but the nearly 13 turnovers per game is a little bit concerning to me. Felix Zapara should be able to win that battle down low. 7.5 points, 5 boards per contest, and then Igor Milicic, good versatility at 6'10". He's able to pop it from 3, 13.5 points, 5.5 5.5 boards, but you've got a UT Martin team that they themselves play a lot of positionless basketball. You've got a lot of guys who've been able to do a nice job on the glass, like Lamane Niang. He's come in, he's been able to give the team about 5 boards per contest after spent 2 seasons ago some time over at CSUN. For UT Martin, I think that it's going to be all about the rebounding that's going to keep them in there. Tennessee, by the way, a top 20 team currently in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I think that they're going to speed up just a tad, so I did set my total at 149. Did think that for Tennessee, they should see a drop in terms of their offense, but I don't think it's going to be a dramatic drop, but enough to be able to keep UT Martin within the spread. So writing up UT Martin with the points and with the total, I'm in on the over. 701, 702 on the betting board. It is Appalachian St, and they're going to be playing us to Sam Houston. This is actually a neutral court game out there at Trask Coliseum, and for Sam Houston, they find themselves as 5.5 to 6 point favorites. Totals between 143 to 143.5. Did set my total at 144.5, so I'm going to be in on the over. And for the Sam Houston State team, can only set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. For the Sam Houston State team, they just don't necessarily do the fundamentals the world's greatest, as they've been a rough free throw shooting team really for the last 3 seasons, even when they had their great cover percentage during the 2022-23 campaign. They've had Lamar Wilkerson really be able to step up. He's flying the team with 19.5 points per contest, and it's a Sam Houston team that's currently shooting 43.8% from 3-point range. I am sorry. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of a drop off here, and it is a team that's throwing the ball over 13 times per contest. They're back to shooting less than 70% of the free throw line, so I do have a few issues there, and you've only got really one guy that's giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, as you've got a guy in Dorian Finster who's come in as a 6'5" do-it-all player from Kansas State, supplying 12 points, 7 boards per contest. But for Appalachian State, after a few less than savory results to begin the season, that loss that they took by like 30 plus points to Wisconsin, starting to look a little bit better than it did towards the beginning part of the season. It feels like they're getting back to basics with one of the better coaches in all of college basketball, in my opinion, in Justin Kern. Justin Kern has done a nice job just being able to mix and match, and he's got a guy in CJ Huntley who always does a good job with his versatility. He's saying 6'10", 6'11". He's able to give you 15.5 points, 6 boards, has been a mid-30s 3-point shooter over the last few seasons. And for Appalachian State, they've needed to find their bearings in the backcourt, but Miles State is a relatively good facilitator. He's giving out darn near 4.8 assists, 3 steals, and has been able to pick it up on the glass as well, giving you about 5 rebounds per game. Appalachian State's hallmark last season was doing a nice job in terms of their rebound percentage. While they lose the likes of Trayvon Spillers and company, they've been able to find a lot of players that have been able to help out down low, and I think that that's going to be able to help them stay relatively lively in this game. I could only set my line at 2.5 because Appalachian State just feels like with every passing game, they've been able to get better and better, and this is a Sam Houston State team that, while they do a relatively okay job on the glass by committee, they don't necessarily have that one guy that'll be able to dominate down low. And Appalachian State, just with all their size, being able to clean up the turnovers, as it is the Sam Houston State team that's good at being able to pickpocket, but they themselves turn the ball over a ton. I think that you're staring at a game that gets a little bit sloppy, but a game that's going to be very nip and tuck, going to be coming down to those late game free throws, with Sam Houston State not necessarily being the best at the free throw line. So did set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and then did set my total at a 144.5 as well, with the total at 143. I'm in on the over. 7-3, 7-4 on the betting board. Northern Illinois, they're facing up against Valparaiso, and Valparaiso does find themselves as a favorite to 10 points out on this game, between 140.5 to 141. Set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Just not in on this Valparaiso team with Valpo. They've been able to do a nice job of mixing and matching, considering that Isaiah Stafford, their top scorer from the season ago, is out. Davon Ellis has come in from Maryland Eastern Shore. He's been able to supply the team with 13 points per contest for a Valparaiso team that right now is a collective, shooting only about 30.5% from 3, but they are shooting 85% of the free throw line, and starting to warm up on this team a little bit more with Jefferson, De La Cruz, Manegro being able to give you about 2.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. So he's been able to do a nice job being able to fortify this team, and you're getting a little bit more down low out of Casper Sepp. He's a gentleman from Estonia who's been able to give you about 6.5 boards per contest, was a part-time starter last year that did a nice job on glass, limited offensively. You get a little bit more out of Cooper Schwieger, who's 6'10". He was able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range last season. Hasn't found that 3-point shooting pop this far this season, but has done a nice job being able to give the team right around about 11.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, but was limited to 20 minutes in the team's last game. Relatively pedestrian effort, so a little bit of a rough one there. Meanwhile, for Northern Illinois, they went to the other side of the state in Western Illinois for James Dent, who he's been able to supply the team with 11.5 points, 5.5 boards, and has really brought this team together, shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. Northern Illinois starting to clean up some of those turnover woes from a season ago, 12.5 turnovers per game. They had to replace a lot of their top scorers from a season ago, and they're going to have a tough time with Schwieger down low because Dent is the only guy that gives you north of 4 boards per contest, but Ethan Butler is a transfer that began his career over at Oregon. He's been able to show some nice potential, 10.5 points, pulls in their 4 boards. He does not necessarily shoot shoot the three, the world's greatest, but does have a little bit of versatility there. And they found a good go-to scorer in Quentin Jones, who comes in from Cal Poly, where he was a starter a season ago. Last year, 40% three-point shooter. This year, a 37% three-point shooter. And for Northern Illinois, does feel like things have been able to get a little bit better on that front. They were held down defensively each of the last 3 games, 60 points or fewer, and every one of them. That's been relatively rough. Meanwhile, it is a Valparaiso team that they themselves are doing a better job with their defense. 64 points or fewer surrendered in 3 out of their last 4 games. It's been hot and cold in terms of the offense, starting to come on. I did set my total at a 148.5. I do think that Northern Illinois going to be looking to push the tempo, and that's very much based around the fact that they have given up 75 plus points in each of their last 3 games. So certainly they've been getting bludgeoned a little bit more defensively, but I do think that both of these teams finding their footing on offense, especially Darius Eviero for Valparaiso, giving out 4.5 assists to about 1.5 turnovers per game. So I think that on both sides, you're going to get some clean flowing offense, with Valparaiso last year being outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So do like the over, and won't take the double figures here with Northern Illinois. Made them a 6.5 point dog. 7-5, 7-6 on the betting board. It is Harvard, and they're going to be playing OC UMass. UMass a 2.5 to a 3-point road favorite. Total on this game, it is 146.5, and I set Harvard as a 1-point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. This is a UMass team that has been miserable to start the season. They are 1-5, and this is just not the same UMass team that we've seen in past seasons. As you've got Daniel Hankins Samford, who's been able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game, but you lose Josh Cohen, you lose Matt Cross. Those 2 guys were combined for 15 plus rebounds per game, and this is just not the same team in the post. Daniel Rivera has come in from Bryan. He's been able to give you about 5.5 boards, 8 points per game, and that's been rock solid, but they didn't have a lot of 3-point shooting last year, and they don't once again this year. They're shooting 27.5% from 3-point range. Jalen Curry's been able to shoot about 36% from the outside, 15 points per contest, and it's given the team at least 13 points in pretty much every one of their games out of the last 5, but he just needs a little bit more help around him. And you've got Rashul Diggins, who's able to give you about 12.5 points per contest, but there's just not a lot there in terms of being able to match up down low. And you've got Chandler Peaky, who's got a lot of good versatility for this Harvard team. 2.5 assists, 13 points, 7.5 boards. Not a guy that's really going to pop it from 3-point range, but that's why you've got Robert Hinton, who is a true freshman. He was a former top 250 recruit. He's come in, shot 38.5% from 3, 17.5 points. He has been able to hit right away for this Harvard team. Harvard has been close but no cigar in a lot of their games this season. They bring back Evan Nelson, who 2 seasons ago was a high 33-point shooter. He's able to give the team 8 points per contest. Now Harvard as a collective only shooting about 30.5% from 3. They turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, so leave something to be desired there, but a lot of that has been because they've been dealing with some injuries, like Austin Hunt, who was a true freshman who had 9 assists in the first 2 games of the season. He's been injured. Lewis Lesman was one of the top players from his season ago. He dealt with injuries and just came back in that game against Colgate. He was averaging 10 points, shot 38% from 3-point range 8 seasons ago. One of the few upperclassmen on this team. Getting him back, I think, is just absolutely massive, and is going to turn the fortunes of this Harvard team, and it's a big reason why I've set them as a favorite. Without him in the fold, I think that this number of 2 or so, that'd be relatively correct on UMass, but I do think that Luis Lesman being able to come back for this Harvard team, being able to give them a little bit of a lift as they knocked off Colgate in his first game back 78-67, really speaks volumes about this team, and I do think that they find a way to get the job done against the UMass team that they still play relatively up and down, but are just lacking anything in terms of offense. In regulation, since their game against Hofstra went to overtime, they have scored 69 points or fewer for their last 5 games. I do think that Harvard going to start to pick it up a little bit more defensively. So semi-total 145. I like the under and Harvard outright on the money line. 707, 708 on the betting board. This is from Hertz Arena. You've got Ball State and Richmond doing battle from the great state of Florida. No numbers up on this game. Ball State actually played against a non-Division I team yesterday in Florida Tech, and Richmond, they played yesterday as well, which is why this game is off the board, but I've got my handicap as I did set Ball State has a 3.5 point dog, willing to lay up to 3 with Richmond, 4 more, taking those points with Ball State, and then 137.5 or less. I'm in on the over 138 or higher, the under. This is a Ball State unit that has a bunch that I think is going to be able to improve as the season goes along. They're trying to work Peyton Sparks back in after he spent last season over at Indiana. 2 years ago when he was part of this program. He was giving the team about 7 boards, 13 plus points per contest, and he just looks to be getting better and better as the days go along. They did not give him really much playing time at all against the Florida Institute of Technology. I don't know if it was injury concerns or what have you, but that is something that you do want to be monitoring in this game, and if he's unable to go in this game, I probably would be shading my number down a little bit, but I just anticipated this being more of a case of they wanted to see what they had in other guys, because it was a blowout by Ball State in this one, fun, and you've been able to have a lot of guys be able to step up to the plate for them, as you've been able to get a little bit of production out of Jeremiah Hernandez, who comes in from Southern Indiana. He was the starter for them last year, 17 points per contest, and shot about 32% from three-point range. Began his career over at Kent State. He came off the bench for 13 points, 6 boards. They were able to see what they had in him. They need to find a little bit more facilitation, and they seem to be getting that out of Jeremiah Hill. He's now able to give you about 2.5 assists per game. He's been a nice primary scorer with 16 points per contest, but doesn't necessarily shoot it the best from three-point range. Ethan Britton Watts has been able to give you about 2.5 or so assists per contest coming in for the Patriot League. And for this Richmond team, they lose 4 of their top 5 scorers from a season ago, but Delani Hunt, who is that main scorer from a season ago, he's been able to supply the team with 17.5 points per contest, and they lose the 7-footer Neil Quinn, who had good versatility, but they bring in Jonathan Meagle. He comes on over from Albany, 12.7 boards, 3 assists. He's been able to do a nice job stuffing the stat sheet, but for this Richmond team, just not the same three-point shooting team that they were a season ago, currently shooting about 30% from distance last year under the tutelage of Jordan King, who is just such a good three-point shooter. They were one of the better mid-major teams at being able to bomb from three-point range, and you just don't know who's going to step up night in and night out. The UConn transfer in Apostas Romaglu has been able to give you a little bit of production, as he's been able to pull in for the team 10-plus rebounds in each of the last 2 games, so he seems to be coming to the forefront for them. And Dusan Niskovic, he's been able to give you 9 points, 3.5 boards per contest. Jason Roche, he had a really nice game 2 games ago, and then he follows that up with a 0-burger, so he has scored in the last 4 games 3, 19, 22, and 0 points. You just don't know what you're going to get out of him night in, night out. Entered into yesterday, shooting north of 50% from three-point range, so it's a very hodgepodge Richmond bunch. Whether or not Peyton Sparks is or is not out there on the court for Ball State, should be able to keep the, I guess you could call it, total relatively consistent of a 137 or less to the over, 138 or higher to the under. But if you have Sparks in, I would be willing to lay up to 3 with Richmond, 4 more taking the points with Ball State. I think he's worth 2 points with the line. So if he's out, it's going to be Richmond being up to a 5-point favorite that I would be willing to lay with them. And then at 6 or more, I would be willing to take the points with Ball State. So a little bit of wait and see based on the availability of Peyton Sparks after playing just 5 minutes yesterday. 7:09, 7:10 on the betting board. It is a Lindenwood, and they're facing off against Missouri. Missouri does find themselves as a 29-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 148.5 to 149. Seeing a lot of 29 starting to pop up out there as well. And at a 29.5, that is my buy point on Lindenwood. I set my number at a 29, so if we go below a 29, I'd be willing to lay it with our good friends over there in Missouri. Missouri has been really blowing out these outmatched teams. Like we saw them take it to poor Mississippi Valley State by 70 points. Arkansas Pine Bluff got completely lambasted, but I do think that Lindenwood is better than both of those teams. You've got Jadis Jones, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 7 boards, and he's come in as a freshman and has been able to give the team a little bit of spark. Markeith Browning is someone that began his career over at UW Milwaukee, and when he was at UW Milwaukee, he was a part-time starter. He was able to facilitate. He's a okay player as well, and I'm looking for a little bit more out of Reggie Bass. Lindenwood has been, for some reason, bringing him off the bench in a lot of games. Like, this is a guy that's able to give you a double-figure amount of points per game, spend some time at Central Michigan, spend some time over at Kent State. He's the best player that they've got, and they have not utilized him to his fullest potential. Meanwhile, for Missouri, you've got Tamar Bates, who's been able to give you 13 points, shooting 42.5% from three-point range. Caleb Grill has been able to grill teams up with 15.5 points, and it's a team as a collective in Missouri that's turning the ball over less than 10 times per contest, shooting 37% from 3. Again, they have not played the world's greatest competition aside from that game against Memphis, and we're starting to see how good Memphis is, but having Mark Mitchell be able to give you 5 rebounds per game, that's big, because Missouri, under Dennis Gates' last 2 seasons, outside the top 300 in terms of rebound rate. Now they're looking a little bit better there. Tony Perkins is able to give you about 3 assists per contest, and you've been able to get 3.8 assists, 10 points per game out of Anthony Robinson, who's been able to take a nice leap from year 1 to year 2. He saw a little bit of time off the bench last season, but is looking a lot better now. Once you get past 29, I think that you've got a little bit too lofty. I think less than 29 one to lay with Missouri, but right now seeing the 29.5, that would put me on Lindenwood, and it's up my total 153. You've got a Lindenwood team that's well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a squad that against D1 competition this year, they've given up 74 plus points in all but one of their games thus far this season. And for Missouri, how about being able to put up an 84 plus spot in each of their last 4 games? So looking at the over and anything north of 29 in on the points with Lindenwood. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Nebraska playing us to South Dakota. South Dakota just find themselves as 18.5 point underdogs on this game. Is between 157.5 to 158.5. I just said Nebraska as a 18.5 point favorite. So if we can get down to an 18, I'm willing to lay with Nebraska. If we get past that number and we go to 19, that'll be my buy point on South Dakota. I think I saw 17.5 out there a little bit before, but it was at a book that I couldn't bet at, so there would be that aspect of it. But for South Dakota. This is a team that's able to light you up from three-point range. Last year, a top 40 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. They bring back a lot of that exterior from a season ago, a lot of that backcourt, but they do not bring back Leathione down low, and as a result, they just don't have a ton in the post. You've got a 7-footer in Cameron Fens who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but he doesn't necessarily have a lot of stretchability or anything like that. He's a very hit-or-miss sort of guy, and then you've got the Brunses, as you've got Mr. Paul Bruns, who's able to give you about 8 to 9 points per contest, and then Isaac Bruns, who's been able to give you about 13 points per game. The Bruns Burners have been not necessarily shooting the world's greatest from three-point range, both right around 30% from the outside. Should be going northward as the season goes along. Do have to wonder the mindset of Nebraska coming off of a massive win against Creighton, but as we're learning, Creighton not looking necessarily so great this season. As for Nebraska, you got Bryce Williams, who's able to lead the way with 18 points. Not necessarily shooting the best from three-point range either. For Nebraska, they're shooting 25.5% from the outside. This is going to be going northward as the season goes along. The big question is, who's that main facilitator? You don't have a single guy for Nebraska that's throwing out more than 2 assists per contest, but they haven't been overly sloppy with it. You'd like to see less than 12.2 turnovers per contest, but it's passable. Maybe Aaron Eulis, who comes on over from Iowa, has been seeing limited minutes. They get a little bit more out of him. They've got some good stretchability out of the North Dakota State transfer in Andrew Morgan. At 6'10", he's able to give you some mid-30s three-point shooting, 6.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. So like what I'm seeing there, but for Nebraska, they certainly are going to be able to win that battle down low, but at an 18 or less, going to be willing to lay with them, 19 or more taking those points with South Dakota, and both of these teams, I think, are in for some three-point shooting positivity, but do think that this total's went up a little bit too lofty here. This is a Nebraska team that they've been dialing things back a little bit and have been much better on defense here in recent years. So I'm going to be looking at the under, my total 154.5, and at 18 or less, one to lay with Nebraska, 19 or more in on South Dakota. 7-13, 7-14 on the betting board. Ryder hits a road face-off against Villanova. Nova is an 18.5 point favorite. Totals between 138 to 138.5. More than willing to take the points here with Ryder. With Ryder, I did set them as an underdog more around the 12 to 12.5 point range because with Ryder, I like what I've seen with this team defensively. They went on the road against Bucknell last week, held them to below 60 points. I recognize that's not necessarily an amazing Bucknell offense, but that said, with Villanova, they do have one of the best players in all of college basketball. That'd be Eric Dixon. He has been completely carrying this team. He's been able to supply for the team right around about 26.5 points, 7+ boards, was suspended for the first game of the season, and he's making up for lost time as he's also been able to shoot 53.5% from three, and Villanova, will always shoot well at the free throw line. They've been atop of college basketball each other the last 3 years in this category. They're once again shooting about 81.5% at the free throw line. Everyone who's been able to average north of 3.1 points per contest shooting at least 75% at the free throw line. So good versatility there. Jamari Brinkus, Jordan Longino, they're starting to give you a little bit more in terms of facilitation as well. Combined about 7.5 assists per game, but they also turn the ball over 4 times per contest for an offense as slow as Villanova. 12 turnovers per game, not necessarily so great. And then TJ Weeks on the flip side has been able to do a nice job supplying this Ryder team with 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, and you've got a lot of positionless basketball for this Ryder team. Out of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them have been able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game. Jay Alvarez, who comes on over from HOU Christian, 10 points, 4 boards. He's shooting 43.5% from the outside for a Ryder team that they need to clean things up themselves. They've been turning the ball over darn near 14.5 times per game. Good news is they go up against a Villanova team that they themselves are not a team that's necessarily going to generate a lot of turnovers, and really neither of these teams are going to as well. For Ryder, it's been a little bit more of a pedestrian offense, to say the least, 68 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. For Villanova, just uncharacteristically rough with regards to their defense. They've given up 70+ points in 3 out of their last 4 games, so it is an interesting ordeal here. Villanova has had a tougher time being able to guard the 3-point line than they have in past years. Ryder in a little bit of transition with losing their point guard from a season ago and Corey McKeithen, but I do think that they're going to be able to say in this one, find some holes in a Villanova defense that just frankly hasn't necessarily been playing the world's greatest. I did set my total at 140 as a result. I do think that Ryder going to be able to bust out here. I think that this is going to be a low possession game, but it's going to be a, shall we say, high offensive efficiency game. So in on the over and the points with Ryder, 7-15, 7-16 on the betting board. It is Cornell. They hit the road to face off against Syracuse. Syracuse, a 9 to 10 point favorite, and your total on this game between 162.5, seeing size of 164.5 out there as well. And with Cornell, I'm going to be willing to take the points. I was willing to take anything of 9 or more. I set Syracuse as an 8.5 point favorite. I do think that Syracuse going to be able to come into their own. I like what they added in the offseason as they bring the guy that's able to just do a nice job, be able to dole out the ball, not going to be too much of a scorer, but coming in from Hofstra, you've been able to get right around about 3.5 assists per game out of Yaquan Carlos, and then down low, Eddie Lampkin has actually been a really nice passer as a big man as well. He's been able to give you about 3.5 assists, 8 boards, 12.5 points per game. You know that he's not really going going to pop it from 3-point range, but that's why you've got J.J. Starlin, who's able to give you 21.5 points per contest. And last year, Chris Bell was a double-figure scorer, and last year he shot right around 42% from 3. Expected a little bit of a fall off, but at 6'7", shooting below 30% from 3, we should be seeing a little bit of a rebound there, as a collective Syracuse shooting just 25.5% from the outside. This is a Cornell team that has been getting blowtorch from the outside, but this is also a Cornell team that traditionally they do a good job of generating turnovers. Haven't done as much of that this season, but as we know with Cornell, it's a whole is greater than some of its parts approach. It's going to be bombing it from 3-point range. Cornell this season shooting in the neighborhood about 32.5% from 3-point range. Typically, you expect that to be closer to 33, 34% from the outside, and Guy Ragland should be able to hold his own down low against Eddie Lampkin, 7.5 boards, a little bit over a steal per game, and it is a Cornell team that, once again, has something like 8 or so guys are giving you at least 5 points per contest. You've been able to have Jake Feigen be that main guy, giving you about 15.5 points per contest, but 11 points, 4.5 assists out of A.K. Okereke, who's been able to do a nice job helping run a little bit more of this offense. But then you also have been able to get something out of Nazir Williams as well. It's a nice stat sheet. Suffer, 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists. So do like what I'm seeing there from him, and this is a circumstance where I think that both of these teams are going to be shooting it really well from 3-point range. Syracuse was great in terms of being able to generate steals last year. They have not done any of that this year, so should have a lot of nice, clean, open shots for both of these teams. Did set my total at 164.5, so I think below a 164, I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take 9+ here with Cornell. 7-17, 7-18 on the betting board. This will be a game that makes my write-up. Says UW Milwaukee, they are on the road against Central Florida. In Central Florida, a 12 to 13 point favorite. Thought on scheme between 153.5 to a 154, and I wrote this up at 12.5. I'd be willing to lay up to 17.5 with Central Florida. I made them an 18.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to lay it here with Central Florida. I do think that you've got yourself some good value here with a bunch that has been able to do a tremendous job of just being able to, shall we say, compensate for all the losses in the backcourt. They lose Jalen Sellers in an exhibition matchup before the start of the season, but they've been able to get a lot out of Darius Johnson. Johnson has been able to give you multiple steals per contest all throughout his career, and he's been able to step up as a little bit more of a primary scorer for a Central Florida team that I think should be able to see a rise in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Not that I think that these guys are going to be shooting 40+% all season, but right now they're shooting 29.7% from the outside. Outside Johnson, you really don't have anyone else that shoots above 33% from 3, and I do think that Jordan Ivy Curry is going to be that guy that steps up. He's right now their primary scorer, 17.5 points per game. Over at UTSA last season, shot 38.5% from 3. That's down to about 30 thus far this season, so do expect that to be able to rise up. And for Central Florida, you've been able to have Keyshawn Hall, the transfer from George Mason, step up, give the team 7.5 boards, 2 assists. He's got really good versatility. Benny Williams is able to give you about 4.5 boards per contest, and then the true freshman, 7'2", Mustafa Thiam, he's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds. Seems like he's coming along a little bit more in the front court as well. Flip side for UW Milwaukee, they do have one of the top rebounders in all of college basketball right now. It's JaMychal Stillwell, has been able to give you north of 10 rebounds per game, and then AJ McKee, he comes on over after he was coached by Lundy over at Queens NC back when they were at the Division II level, and now he comes on in. He's been able to give the team 16 points per contest, while Themis Folks, the transfer from Louisiana, doles out 5 assists per contest, but it is a UW Milwaukee team that they themselves, without BJ Freeman, they just don't have a ton from the outside. They're missing that one sort of do-it-all sort of player from a season ago, so they've been turning the ball over 13 times per contest. They shoot just 30% from 3 and 65% at the free throw line, with a lot of their games coming at home earlier in the season as well. They've been dealing with a few injuries as well. Facion Fields has been spare games this season. Eric Pratt has been out for 5 games as well. He's been missing since that Northern Iowa game in the first week or so of the season. He was one of their top guys from season ago, so it's a little bit of a banged up UW Milwaukee bunch that's trying to replace that main guy. I think that here against Central Florida, going to be a bit of a rough go of it. So I did set this line at an 18. I'm going to be willing to lay with Central Florida, and that'll be a write-up of mine. And with this total, I set mine at a 152. Here at a 153, and I think we've gotten just a scotch shoe high with both of these teams having some rough 3-point shooting. So looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay with Central Florida. 7-19, 7-20 on the betting board. This game is off the board between UNC Greensboro and UTEP, and this is a game that's happening out here in Henderson, Nevada, and I've got my handicap set Greensboro as a 2-point favorite with a total of 140, so 139.5 or less, and on the over 140.5 or higher. The under with Greensboro, willing to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more, taking those points with UTEP. UTEP entered into the day on Tuesday as the number 1 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they just completely suck the life out of a Long Beach State team that has been not very good recently, so it has been a little bit less than savory. But that said, for UTEP in that game, they forced 27 turnovers, and Long Beach State had 15 made field goals. That's exactly what this team is able to do. They've got some really nice players in the backcourt that have been able to step up in a big way. You don't have a lot down low, though. Kevin Kalou's been able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game. David Terrell, up until yesterday, he wasn't really finding his shot, but he had been able to do a nice job giving this team a few steals, and last season gave the team 5.5 points per contest, so he's something to build around in that backcourt. But this is also a UTEP unit that they have been sort of hit and miss in terms of their three-point shooting as well. Went 7-21 yesterday, and last year they were a team that was well outside the top 250 in this category and really thrived off of the non-D1 games earlier in the season to make them look like a better three-point shooting team. Meanwhile, for UNC Greensboro, they do lose someone like a Mikel Brown-Jones, who was such a good three-point shooter from the season ago, but you bring back Donovan Atwell. He was a double-figure scorer from the season ago. That's why the season give you 12.5 points, shooting in the high 30s for three-point range for a Greensboro team that entered into yesterday, shooting about 37.5% from the outside. They're doing a rock-solid job generating turnovers with Keenan Giles, who he follows his coach Mike Jones. You say who, and I say Mike Jones, on over from Radford, entered into yesterday with 15.5 points, 2 steals, 2 assists. Nice stat sheet suffer with Ronald Polite, the main facilitator over at George Mason the last few seasons, being able to give this team 4 assists per contest as well. Not a team with necessarily a ton down low, but they've been able to get a little bit more in terms of the 7 rebounds per game out of Miles Jones, who he's only been able to give the team right around about 3 points per game, but I do look at this ordeal. I do think that UNC Greensboro is just enough to be able to win that battle down low. I think that they'll take good enough care of the ball to get the job done in Greensboro. A good three-point shooting team, and if you can break that UTEP press, there are open threes to be had. So 139.5 or less, and on the over 140.5 or higher, the under 1 to lay up to 1.5 with Greensboro, 2.5 or more taking those points with UTEP. 721, 722 on the betting board. Samford is going to be playing against Utah Valley. This is a true home game for Samford, and right now they open up as a 4.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, you're finding that at a 157. And I set my total at 157.5. As long as we can keep it at 157 or less in on the over end, I'm going to lay up to 7 with Samford now. Samford, a less than savory run to end their day yesterday as they were up double figures against North Dakota State. They scored 50 points in the first half, and then the second half got a little bit hairy before they got the job done, but they did not get the cover in that game. So do have to question if they're going to be a little bit tired out for this one, but we have seen it with the Samford team. They've got a lot of depth, and these guys are just willing to run. It's headlined by Ryland Jones, the main point guard, who he had 19.6 assists in the game yesterday, and he's overall for the season been able to give you about 6 assists to fewer than 2 turnovers per contest. Colin Aldway, the transfer that comes in from Tulane, he's been a nice double-figure scorer, giving you about 13 or so points, shooting well north of 40% for 3-point just for the season. More of a career 35-36% 3-point shooter, but his 6'6" versatility is very big, and what else is very big for the team? What you're able to get out of 6'11" Riley Allen Patch. He had a little bit of a quiet day yesterday, but he's able to give you some really nice versatility as well. I just think that it's going to be tough for Utah Valley to be able to match up with this. Utah Valley, typically a very rough and tumble defensive team that has improved their 3-point shooting as well. They last season were shooting less than 31.5% from 3-point range as a collective, so they've been able to do a much better job on that front, but barely got by West Georgia yesterday, so a little bit of a concern there. They are headlined by the Welling brothers, as you've got Hayden and Carter Welling, a pair of guys that are combining for north of 20 points per contest, both stand 6'10", both are shooting north of 35% from 3-point range. Both are able to give you some good rebounding, with Welling, the other Welling, Carter Welling, being the main guy in terms of the glass yesterday, being able to give you 11 boards in that one. And Hayden was limited just 6 minutes yesterday, so do have to wonder if there's something going on there that seemed a little bit out of character, but you've also been able to get a lot of production out of Mr. Do-It-All and Mr. Dominique Nelson. Nelson has been able to come in, give the team north of 14 points per contest. He's pulling in there about 7 or so rebounds per game overall for the season, only shooting about 25 or so percent from 3-point range, but has been able to do a little bit of this and that for the team. But it is a Utah Valley team that still, they do have their question marks in terms of being able to guard the perimeter as well, and I do think that Samford, they're going to be able to speed this game up. Utah Valley looking to play a little bit more mid-tempo, and I just don't think that they're going to get that style against a Samford team that I think is just going to, for lack of a better term, speed them up on their home floor. So circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay up to a 7 with Samford, and if we get the 157 like I'm seeing right now, that's a max in terms of what I'm going to be willing to go over on, but willing to go over. 723, 724. Another game that's going to make my write-up. Northern Kentucky is on the road against College of Charleston. Charleston is a 6.5 point favorite, and your total is between 142 to 143. I caught a circa opener of 141.5 that I wrote up, so like it here at the 142.5 to 143. somebody total 153. So I am in on the over, and that's what I'm going to be writing up. With Charleston, had a very, very rough go of it a few days ago against Rhode Island. They scored 53 points in that game, and I do think that they're in for a little bit of a rebound, and because of that game yesterday, they have some of the biggest splits in terms of home and road scoring in all of college basketball for very obvious reasons. But Ante Brzovic is a guy that I absolutely love, and I don't think that Northern Kentucky is going to be able to guard. 22.5 points, 9.5 boards at 6'10", shooting 46.5% from three. As a collective, Charleston shooting 33% from the outside, and they are turning the ball over a bit too much, 14.8 times per game, but part of those turnovers are because this team plays super fast in the top 20 nationally in terms of total possessions per game, with CJ Fulton stepping up as that more full-time point guard, being able to give you about 5 assists, 10 points per contest. Like what I'm seeing there, you've got 5 different guys for the Charleston team that have been able to give you double figures. That does include Jackson Parenti, who has only played in 3 games thus far this season due to injury. Did miss that game against Rhode Island. Would not be surprised if he misses this one as well. But now you've got Darren Boyd, who's able to pretty much fill that void, as he a season ago was over at Lipscomb and he had 18 points in his first game, just 10 points in the 3 games since. But when he was over at Lipscomb last year, 17.5 points per game, shooting 44% from 3. I think that he's going to be able to get online. And for Northern Kentucky, they've got a nice go-to guy in the backcourt in Sam Vincent that gives you it all. 2.5 steals, 3.5 assists, 5 boards, 10 points per contest for a Northern Kentucky team that they've been turning the ball over about 15 times per contest as well. They're pretty good at being able to generate steals, and with both of these teams generating so many live ball steals, that means that when you do have a turnover, it's likely going to be able to result in a layup on the other end, some fast break opportunities. So I think that that's going to be big to take a look at. And then you've got Trey Robinson down low for this Northern Kentucky team, about 6.5 boards, 8.5 points, 3 assists. He's got some versatility, and 2 seasons ago did shoot 34% from 3-point range. We've seen that go southward ever since then, but do think that in terms of the overall versatility, there's just nobody that's going to be able to match up with Brzovic in the front court / in the backcourt, because he does it all for this team. Although Kian Idejiri, who began his career over at Marquette, he's been able to give the team right around 4 boards, 8 points. He's got 6'9" stretchability, but that said, I do think that this is going to be a game where Charleston is going to be able to crank up the tempo. Northern Kentucky looking to play a little bit more slow and control, but their defense just has not been the same as it has been in past seasons as well. They're well outside the top 160 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis against C1 competition. They've allowed 72 plus in 3 out of their 4 games thus far this season. You've got a Charleston team that's getting pretty flattened with regards to their defense as well, but they've been able to get to at least 76 points in all but 2 of their games thus far this season. So did set a 153 total. I'm in on the over. Set Charleston as a 9-point favorite, so want to lay the 6.5 here. 725, 726 on the betting board. It is Montana, and they play us to CSUN. Cal State Northridge just find themselves in a pick'em game / as a 1-point underdog total odds game between 152.5 to 153.5. Don't want to be laying much more than a 1 with Montana, but I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 1. I feel like this is a relative toss-up game that I just default a little bit more to the home team on. For CSUN, they've done a nice job of being able to improve their 3-point shooting percentage. That was rough last season. Like, CSUN was able to do a really good job defensively under first-year coach Andy Newman, but they just didn't have a lot of 3-point shooting in general. Now they've got more versatility with Keontae Jones being Mr. Do-It-All. 16.5 points, 8.5 boards, 3.5 assists. He was at the D2 level with Mr. Newman 2 seasons ago and has really fit in well with this offense. But now you've got Marcus Adams Jr. along Scotty Washington, a pair of guys that are giving you 15 points per contest. Adams began his career over at BYU and Kansas. He was a top 75 recruit, stands right around 6'7", is able to give you mid-30s 3-point shooting, so love what he's able to bring to the table. You've got some good versatility as well with Mohamed Fofana at 6'6". Last season gave the team 5 points, 5 boards, about a steal per contest. He's able to give you a little bit of 3-point shooting, but that's not necessarily his forte, and this is a team that's willing to go about 8 or 9 deep. But for Montana, you do have money. That would be Money Williams, who's been able to supply the team for 14 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, and it's a Montana team that should be going northward with their 26.5% 3-point shooting. You've got Brandon Whitney, who's back, who shot about 40% from distance a season ago, and Joe Pridgeon just allows this team to be so versatile. He's dealt with injuries over the last few seasons, whether that be at UNC Wilmington or Northeastern, but so remember, as a freshman when he was over at Holy Cross, 17.5 points, 7 boards, shot 43% from 3. He's showing that once again. 13 points, shooting about 43% from the outside as a 6'5" do-it-all sort of player. And then additionally, Tajon Sawyer has been able to give you a little bit at 6'10", 6'8", being able to be a nice rim protector. Doesn't give you a ton of rebounding. He's only been able to supply the team with about 3.5 boards per contest, but he's another guy that is able to give you some three-point shooting. Additionally, Austin Patterson should be able to improve his three-point shooting as well. Comes on over from Sacramento St. He's a career 38% three-point shooter that, as far as the season, shooting just 32% from the outside. He's been able to supply this team with about 7.5 points per contest, but do think that goes northward against a CSUN team that they've been a little bit gashed with regards to their defense against E1 competition. They've given up 69 plus in 3 of their last 4 games, with the 69 coming against Sacramento State actually being a relatively low mark. And for Montana, they're typically a slow and controlled team, but they are very efficient on offense. They're very inefficient on defense, but I just think that you like the amount of possessions, and with both of these teams playing pretty much game number 3 in 4 days, to be able to get this total over, semi-total 149.5, I like the under, and with Montana, we'll lay up to 1 with them. 727, 728 on the betting board. San Jose State and Long Beach State are going to be playing over in Henderson, Nevada. Long Beach State, a 3-point dog, and your total on this game, it is 128, and I set my line at 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with San Jose State, and with this total, I have very much had to shade down my Long Beach State totals because my goodness, this team is absolutely terrible with regards to their offense, but set it at a 129.5. So reluctantly, I'm going to be willing to dive back in on the over. Maybe I'm just a schmuck here, but with watching this Long Beach State team and their 27 turnovers yesterday, I don't think that it can get much worse than that. As for this Long Beach State team, they let go of their coach, Dan Monson, just before their NCAA tournament run last season, and under Chris Acker, things are not necessarily going well for them. They have Devin Askew, able to give you 15 plus points per contest, a former top 75 recruit, but it's just about finding these guys in general that are able to help them out. Derek Michael Ziviero, he comes in and he's been able to give the team about 6-7 rebounds per game, so he's been relatively okay there, but I do think that for the San Jose State team, they're going to be able to do a bit of a better job down low, as Robert Viola entered into yesterday with only about 5 or so rebounds per game, and I expect a little bit more out of him moving forward. And then you did see the finally coming out party of Sadiq Nana. He last season was over at, I believe, Seton Hall. A year before, he was at Boise State. Just could never really find his footing at either school. He's been averaging about 6 points, 4 boards per contest, but at 6'10", he gives some relatively good size and a bit of versatility for the San Jose State team, and we're looking for Day Hall to be able to bust out as well. 2 seasons ago over at Stephen F. Austin, he was their top scorer with 13 points, shooting 36% from 3 at 6'5", has dealt with injuries and just has not looked like himself thus far this season. You've got Donovan Yap, who's able to give you some nice scoring as well, was a really good 3-point shooter last season over at Fresno State, but with regards to Long Beach State, I just cannot take them at +3. I would need at least +8 to be able to do so, because this team has been going down the toilet bowl defensively as well, because while we point out the fact that this team offensively has not been great, they're also a team that is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well. So I do think that Long Beach State is going to be able to put up some nice points on the board. So this is a circumstance where I did set my total at a 129.5. If we're able to get anything of a 129 or less, I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay the 3 that I'm right now seeing with San Jose State. Now we head out to the Bahamas for the battle for Atlanta. 729, 730 on the card. It is Louisville. They throw to face off against Indiana. Indiana 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 154.5. Did set Indiana as a favorite of 5.5 points. So going to be willing to lay this number for Indiana. Just like the experience in general, I think that if this were a game that were being played in more, I would say like February, March, I probably would be in on Louisville, because the talent is undeniable with this team. You bring in so many guys like a Chucky Hepburn that are really good scorers. You bring in someone like a Keshawn Pryor is able to give you quite a bit of something down low, but that's where I think Indiana wins this battle. They're able to win it on the post. Umar Ball is giving you darn near a double-double once again, 12 points, 10 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest. Malik Renew along with Mackenzie Mbakpo are both giving you 6.5 boards, and Mbakpo is up to about 19 points per game, and thus far this season, shooting north of 50% from 3-point range, as we were talking about with Justin Perri. Do think that that's going to be going southward, but that said, I do think that there's still going to be some open looks against this Louisville team that is still learning how to play defense as well. For Louisville, they were able to hold down Winthrop and Bellarmine, but we saw what happened against Tennessee a little bit earlier in the season as well. For this Louisville team, they're still just trying to find their bearings in terms of who's going to be that main facilitator. I mentioned Hepburn a little bit before. He's been able to give out 4 assists per contest. He's been able to get a little bit bit of something out of Terrence Edwards as well. 12 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, and right now it's a team that's turned the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. They're a better shooting team than 29.5% from three-point range, but I have to shade down my totals whenever you have these Battle for Atlantis games, because if you've watched these Battle for Atlantis games, the rims are as hard as bricks. When you watch these games, it's absolutely incredible. You want to be shading up your totals for Maui because it feels like they've got some of the softest rims on planet Earth. If they have the softest rims, well, the Battle for Atlantis might have the hardest rims on the face of planet Earth, like every single time. So that's something that I do factor in with regards to this handicap, and that's a big reason why I did set my total at a 147.5. But with this Indiana team, I do think that you're going to be able to get some good backcourt play out of Trey Galloway as well, who's been able to do a nice job being able to give out for this team about 5 assists per contest, and Cannon Carlisle needs to pick it up as well. He last season over at Samford had a really nice start to the season, completely cratered at the end of the season, and right now is looking like the back half of last season version of Cannon Carlisle over at Samford as well, as he's only given the team about 5 points per contest. That said, with Indiana, I do think that they're going to be able to dominate down low, and that's going to lead to a little bit more of a grimy game, so I'm in on the underside. My total 147.5 and 1 to 5 with Indiana. 731, 732 on the betting board. Gonzaga is going to be playing against West Virginia. Also out there for the Battle for Atlantis, with West Virginia, you're going to be catching 15 to 15.5 points. 155 to 156 is the total, and I set my total at 154.5. I'm going to be in on the under for Gonzaga. We always talk about the outside shooting with this team, but they're year in and year out a top 5 team with regards to 2-point shooting as well, so that takes out the factor a little bit more of the rims, but still do want to be looking at the under. I do think that West Virginia going to do just enough to hold in there. I'm going to be willing to take the points. The versatility of Jabal Small is just so big for this West Virginia team. 15.5 points, 4 assists, is turning the ball over about 3 times per contest, but gives you about 3.5 boards. Right now shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. It's going to be up to Amani Hansberry to be able to hold in this game down low. He's been able to give West Virginia about 7.5 rebounds per game. As for Gonzaga, you don't necessarily have supreme rebounding numbers or anything like that. That's because they've been in so many blowouts that Graham Ike is only averaging about 17 minutes per contest. You only need to have Brandon Huff out there for 19 minutes per game. So these guys have not had to play a full allotment of minutes throughout the season. I like what I'm seeing out of Michael Ajayi, the transfer from Pepperdine, who's been able to give you 6 points, 6 boards. He last year was a north of 45% 3-point shooter. And Ryan Nembhard has just been so efficient. 9.4 assists, so 1.2 turnovers per game while shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. And I do think that Gonzaga is going to be able to keep that good, clean, flowing offense going, as they're only turning the ball over about 8 times per contest. Not necessarily playing at warp speed, but they've been playing relatively fast this season. And for West Virginia, they've got some things going on offense as well. In their 4 games this season, they've gotten to at least 75 points in all but one of them. They were held down in that game against Pittsburgh, but they've also been able to do a relatively solid job defensively as well. You've got to love the fact that Tucker DeVries is able to give you a little bit of everything as well. 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 steals per game, as this is a West Virginia team that really did a nice job feasting on those turnovers in that game against Iona. They themselves, though, turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game. The 37% 3-point shooting, I think, is going to be going downward, and need to find out what you have in some of these ancillary pieces like Atomi Okani, who comes on over from UIC. That said, do think that West Virginia goes out there and they're able to hold in there against a Gonzaga team that they showed some wobbliness earlier in the season against Arizona State, against San Diego State. They're always in control of that game, but they never really pulled away at all either. And this is a Gonzaga team that's a bit improved defensively as well. So I'm going to be in on the underside. My total at a 154.5, and we'll take anything of 15 points or more with West Virginia. 733, 734 on the betting board. It's Oklahoma and Providence doing battle out there for the Battle for Atlantis. And in the Battle for Atlantis right now, you're finding Providence as a 2.5 to a 3-point underdog. Total on this game between 134.5 to a 135.5. I know that we were talking about this with Justin Perri, and he's been hearing some rumors that perhaps we may not be seeing Bryce Hopkins for his first game of the season. He's officially listed as a game-time decision. Right now, the way that I'm handling this is as if he is going to be playing, but he's going to be playing at, shall we say, significantly less than 100%, which I think is a reasonable expectation when you're coming off of a pretty dramatic injury like he is, and it's been less than a full 12 months. You just don't know what to expect out of a guy. For Bryce Hopkins, last year, 15.5 points, 8.5 boards per contest, didn't necessarily shoot it well from 3-point 2 seasons ago, was pretty much your top scorer on a team that made the NCAA tournament, so they could really use him, because right now Bentley Joseph has been leading the way with 12 points, 4 assists, but his team as collective shooting just 31.5% from 3-point range, and more concerning, they're shooting 61% at the free throw line. This is a Providence team as well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, albeit they've been one of the most stifling defenses In college basketball with Wesley Cardet, the transfer from Chicago State, stepping up. He's giving you about 9 to 10 points per contest, but really fills up the stat sheet. He's able to give you 6 boards. He's able to give you a little bit from the outside. 7-footer Christ Edesonko. He's capable of shooting threes. Hasn't shown that this season, but he's able to pull in there 5 boards per contest. But Jabir Abdul-Rahim, he needs to really step up with Abdul-Rahim, only giving you about 6.5 points per contest. And I really like what I'm seeing from this Oklahoma team. A team that ranks in the top 20 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Providence has been turning the ball over darn near 13 times per game, and Kobe Elvis, he's in the building. He's giving you 11 points per game, shooting less than 30% from three-point range. We should see a little bit of a rebound there. They've been without Bryson Gudine, nice three-point shooter over the last few weeks, probably going to be out once again in this game, but Jalen Moore has been able to give you more. 19 points, 6 boards for an Oklahoma team that's much improved on the glass, with Sam Godwin stepping up, giving the team 11 rebounds per game. Jeremiah Fears, as freshman, has been able to give you 2.5 steals per game as well, and even though Oklahoma forces a lot of steals, they don't necessarily turn the ball over a ton themselves with about 10.5 turnovers per game. So I think that that's going to be big against a Providence team that has been able to be undefeated, but this Providence offense leaving a lot to be desired. And even if Bryce Hopkins does go, how close to 100% is he going to be? Probably not too close to it. So I set my line at 7. I wrote this up for the website. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Oklahoma. And with regards to this total, set mine at a 135. Here at a 134.5. That's my max buy point on the over, but we'll take that over to go along with Oklahoma. 735, 736 on the betting board. It is Davidson, and they're going to be playing against Arizona out there in the battle for Atlantis. Right now, we're finding that total between 153.5 to 155, and Arizona is a 16-point favorite. Set my line at a 17. I'm actually willing to lay the 16 with Arizona. I just thought in on this Davidson team. They have been able to show a little bit more fight here recently. They've had some nice wins here to begin the season, but there's just still a little bit of trepidation with the Davidson team that's not necessarily great from the outside, and it's the Davidson unit that thus far this season they're shooting about 35% from three-point range, but a lot of that has come against outmatched competition. They were really able to up out their numbers against non-Division I William Peace. They went up against VMI. ETSU and Bowling Green are real opponents, but that said, this is a Davidson team that I just need to see a little bit more from that backcourt. You've got Connor Kuchera, who's a really nice off-the-ball scorer. He's able to give you 16 points per contest. And by committee, they've been able to do a nice job facilitating. You've got 5 different guys by committee giving you at least 2.3 assists per contest. Mike Loney, he's been able to come in as a sophomore. He's been able to give you about 3.5 assists per contest as a little bit more of an ancillary scorer. Reed Bailey, Bobby Durkin, these guys are combining for about 35 to 36 points per contest, with Durkin shooting 54% from three-point range. Do think that that's going to be going southward, but you also don't necessarily have a ton of depth with this team. Would like to see a little bit more out of Hunter Adam, the gentleman that comes in from New Zealand, who last season he was able to have some moments for this team as well. Flip side, you've got a bunch in Arizona that they are looking to wash away that loss of, I would say, embarrassment against Duke a few nights ago. Toby Awaka give you 10 rebounds per game, but he got completely neutralized in that game. Caleb Love just seems to have regressed this year. He's shooting 21% from 3, 10 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game. You can say what you want about Caleb Love, but at the very least, he was putting up points last year, and he's not doing that right now. It's been all up to Jaden Bradley, who's been able to give you 15.5 points per game. Like what I've seen out of KJ Lewis as well. Here as a sophomore, he's been able to step up, take a few more threes, only shooting about 27.5% from the outside, but 12 points, 2 assists, 4 boards. He just gives you a little bit of this and that, and you still have a team that does a very good job down low. You've got a true 7-footer, actually closer to 7'2" big man, in Monte Uvis Krivas, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Henry Vassar, he's back after he missed pretty much all of last season, 5.5 points, 5 boards. He's able to give you some three-point shooting. Anthony De La Rosa was all sorts of versatile over at Campbell. I do think that Arizona going to correct the wrongs that we saw from a few nights ago against Duke, where they scored just 55 points in that game. It is a Arizona unit that does look a little bit improved on defense, but certainly a team that's going to be looking to push the tempo in this game, and it's a Davidson team that they are looking to play much more up-tempo this season than they have in past years as well. So set my line at 17. I'm going to be willing to lay with Arizona, and did set my total at a 155. I do think that Arizona going to get a lot of looks down low at the bucket, so looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Arizona. Now we get out to the Maui Invitational. This is 737, 738 on the betting board. Colorado State is taking on Iowa State. Currently no numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap, and we've got that for all these games out there in Maui, but I did set Iowa State as an 11-point favorite with a total of 145, so 144.5 or less, and on the over 145.5 for higher, the under with the Iowa State. Willing to lay up to 10.5 with them, 11.5 or more. Take those points with Colorado Colorado. I'm having to be a little bit more stock up on this Colorado team. As for Colorado, they've done a really nice job of just being able to show some fight, and this is going to be a classic Big 12 on Big 12 matchup when it's all said and done. As for Colorado, they make the shift in the offseason, and for Colorado, you don't necessarily have that true point guard or anything like that. Julian Hammond, if you're looking at one, he's that guy, 3.5 assists per contest, and that is going to be a big issue for Colorado, and that's a big reason why I had to set this line at double figures. They have been turning the ball over about 16 times per contest, and the forte of this Iowa State team being able to generate turnovers with Taman Lipsby along with Keshawn Gilbert being able to give you north of 4 steals per contest. But for Colorado, they do have some really nice size. Andrei Yagmovsky yesterday against UConn was able to have a double-double. He's been able to come in from Washington State, give this team 10 plus points per contest, shoot it relatively well from 3-point range. I like the game of 6'10" Elijah Malone as well. He was an NAIA All-American last season. He's been able to give you about 14 or so points. He's been able to supply about 5 or so rebounds per game. He's able to give you a little bit of 3-point shooting, but Trevor Baskin, the 6'9" combo player that comes in from the D2 ranks, he's a little bit better with that regard. But again, with this Iowa State team, just a top 12 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a very tough customer in general. They had their issues with Dayton yesterday, but they were able to get by, get the job done, a little bit of higher scoring game, and that's an element that they've got a little bit more of this year, and they're just a little bit better down low to be able to defend against a team like Colorado with a lot of size, with Joshua Jefferson coming in from St. Mary's, but it's really been Deshaun Jackson, the transfer from Washington State, who's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, spent last year at Charlotte, who's really been able to elevate this team. Not a guy that's going to stretch the floor and pop it from 3, but that's why you've got Milan Mimosilovic, who he's a 6'8" combo player, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, even someone like Brandon Chatfield, giving the team good production. So 10.5 or less going to be willing to lay it with Iowa State, 11.5 or more taking those points with Colorado, and then in terms of the total, 144.5 or less, and on the over 145.5 or higher. The under is 739, 740 on the betting board. It is Auburn and Memphis doing battle out there in the Maui Invitational. Currently no numbers up on this game, but with Memphis in the title game, by the way, I did set them as a underdog of 8 points, so 8.5 or more taking those points with Memphis, 7.5 or less, 1 to lay with Auburn, and then 155.5 or less in on the over, 156.5 or higher. The under with this Memphis team, I've been more and more impressed by them the more and more that I've seen them. It just feels like they're playing much more smart basketball, for lack of a better term. They're turning the ball over less. They're playing a little bit of better defense. It feels like Penny Hardaway has a little bit of better grip on this team than he has in past years. You've got Tyrese Hunter, who had that nice 23-point game yesterday, but PJ Haggerty has been able to give you 20-plus points per contest. You've got really good rebounding with Dane Danger, Nick Jourdain, along with Musa Cisse, all being able to give you at least 5 boards per contest. Kobe Rogers has been a nice little bit of a third wheel, so able to give you double figures as well, but this is an Auburn team that is just a really, really tough and physical team in general. G&I Broom in the game yesterday against North Carolina had a double-double in the first half. He and Dylan Cardwell were both in the top 80 nationally in terms of block shots on a per-game basis. As a matter of fact, Broom went for 18 points and 15 rebounds by the time they had reached 10 minutes in the second half, so it's just absolutely incredible. But if you need these guys like Denver Jones and Chad Baker-Mazara to light you up, they will as well. Both of these guys shooting darn near 40% from 3-point range. Miles Kelly, he was able to pop off for double figures yesterday. He comes in from Georgia Tech, and then you've got off the bench someone like a J.P. Peegs, who was the top scorer over at Furman. Todd Pettiford, he's been able to do a nice job giving this team some facilitation as a true freshman. And for Auburn, they don't get out of sorts with the ball. They do a great job on the glass. They're very sound defensively. They're able to play an up-tempo game as well. Memphis, I think, is going to be looking to push the tempo, which is why I did set my total more around the range I did, so 155.5 or less, and on the over, 156.5 or higher, the under. But this is an Auburn team I think is truly a top 3 team in all of college basketball. 1 to lay it with 7.5 with Auburn, 8.5 or more. Take those points with Memphis. 741, 742 on the betting board. It is Michigan State, and they're going to be playing against North Carolina. Currently no numbers up on this game, but made North Carolina 4-point favorite. 1 to lay up to 3.5 with them, 4.5 or more. Taking the points with Michigan State, and then 153.5 or less, and on the over, 154.5 or higher. The under for this North Carolina unit. It's been a little bit of an interesting sort of go of it for them. They come back against Dayton. They lose yesterday, but I just still have a few question marks down low. You've got Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington, who have been okay, and Withers has been able to give you 6+ rebounds per contest, but this team just seems very backcourt heavy, and if they're not hitting their shots, it's going to be a little bit of a rough go of it for them. Like Auburn did a nice job of putting them in a little bit of a headlock. You've got RJ Davis, who's a nice top-flight scorer at 20+ points per contest a season ago, and Seth Trimble, nice off-the-ball scorer, was able able to give you 15 plus points per game. All you could do is that main facilitator, but we saw things get very ugly for them in that game against Dayton where they had pretty much 8 turnovers in 8 minutes, and now they face off against a Michigan State team that they're not going to generate like a billion turnovers or anything like that, but it's a Michigan State team that they do a good job with just crisp man-to-man defense, and it's a bunch that has been really able to rise up in terms of some of their younger guys taking on bigger roles. Like you've got Jaden Akins as now that go-to guy has been able to give you 14 plus points per contest. Frankie Fiddler, who comes on over from Omaha, 6'6" combo player that should see his 3-point shooting percentage rise. And for Michigan State in general, entering into yesterday, they were shooting 20% from 3-point range. They're a much better team than this. Really, the lone guy that entered into yesterday shooting above 33.5% from 3 is Chase Richardson, who's been as a freshman a very rock-solid piece. He's been able to give the team about 10 points per contest. Jackson Kaler is able to give you 8 rebounds per game. I think that he's going to do a good job in that battle. On Simon Zapala, who comes on over from Logwood, true 7-footer. He's able to give you about 5.5 boards. He's not necessarily like a standout down low, but he's able to give you a little bit of size. And against a team like North Carolina, I think that that's going to be big. North Carolina going to be looking to push a little bit of tempo. North Carolina's defense a little bit lackadaisical to say the least. I do think that Michigan State a little bit more buttoned up there, but overall I do think that the backcourt advantage does go to North Carolina. So one to lay up to 3.5 with the Tar Heels, 4.5 or more, taking those points with Michigan State, and then 153.5 or less, and on the over 154.5 for higher. The under 743, 744 on the betting board. It is Dayton taking on UConn out there in the Maui Invitational, and right now with UConn, I set them as a 9-point favorite with a total of 141, 8.5 or less. One to lay with UConn, 9.5 or more, taking those points with Dayton, and then 140.5 or less, in on the over 141.5 or higher. The under. This is a number that I would have probably set about 4 points higher a few days ago, but I'm starting to be a little bit more socked down on this UConn team. First few games of the season, they dominated, but it was against much lesser competition, and they still shot it relatively well from 3-point range. Hassan Diarra, along with Solo Ball, these two guys combined to shoot 7 of 10 from 3-point range yesterday, and for Hassan Diarra, he's doing an okay job of being able to maneuver things in the backcourt. It's just not quite what you had from a season ago, and I like what Alex Caravan is able to bring to the table. He's able to give you good versatility with 15 plus points, 4 boards, 4 assists, but it's not as dominant as a guy like a Donovan Clingan. They've been able to get a lot down low, and Terrace Reed, who's coming off the bench, he's been able to give the team north of 8 rebounds per contest, but again, just doesn't feel the same with Liam McNeely now being one of your top scorers. And then on the flip side, you've got yourself a Dayton bunch that I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job down low and get a little bit more out of a guy that we've been banking on, and Zed Key, who's only been able to give you about 3.5 or so rebounds per game. He was a starter at Ohio State a season ago, still giving you a block plus per contest, but they've got the ultimate Swiss Army knife in Enoch Cheeks. Cheeks this season at 6'3", 14 points, 8.5 boards, kid from Rhode Island, so he's going to feel no love lost for the Tar Heels, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. And this has just been a very clean and efficient team with the ball, turning the ball over less than 10 times per contest. Entering into yesterday, Nate Santos at 6'7", he's got good versatility, able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range. And then Malachi Smith, 5 assists, 1.5 turnovers per game. Big question I have, what do you do with Posh Alexander, a guy that just doesn't appear to be a great fit with this team to call it like it is? He's been able to give you some facilitation, but been a little bit strange and random there. You've also got a guy in Isaac Jack who missed a little bit of time earlier in the season. They're trying to work him back into the fold after he began his career over at Buffalo. It's a little bit more of a reserve a season ago as well. And then down low for this UConn team, while you do have a little bit more size, it's just all about how you're able to utilize these pieces. So it is a game where I do think that things are going to be slowed down and very much defense oriented. At 8.5 or less, one away with UConn, 9.5 or more. Take those points with Dayton, and then 140.5 or less. I like the over 142.5 or higher, the under 745, 746 on the betting board. We head out to lovely Las Vegas. This is for the Players Era tournament, as it is Oregon and San Diego State doing battle. With Oregon, they are 2.5 to a 3-point favorite. Total is 138 to 138.5. I did set my line at a 5.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Oregon. Good win yesterday for San Diego State. I just feel like this is a Creighton team that we can't put in the same regard as we have in the past, and I've had to really downgrade this Creighton team, so I'm going to be willing to lay it with Oregon. For San Diego State, they're still without Reese Dixon Waters. That's that top scorer from a season ago. And for Oregon, you've got some nice versatility in terms of this team. You've been able to have a guy be able to pop off in KJ Evans, who's able to give you a little bit on the outside. He's able to do a bit on the inside as well. Nate Biddle's a 7-footer that's able to pop it from 3, giving you 16 points, 7 boards per contest. And that for San Diego State, you just don't have the same big men that you've had in past seasons. Jared Coleman-Jones has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and now that you're getting Miles Bird fully out there and in the mix after he was missing for a few games a season ago, a guy that was a main reserve and really one of the top guys returning, he should be able to give this team a little bit more of that as well. And then you've got Nick Boyd, who comes on over from FAU. He's been able to average about 15 points per contest, like what he's able to bring to the table, but this is a San Diego State team that, let's call it what it is. If this game goes under, it fares very well for them. If this game goes over, it is not going to be faring so well for them. They are very much a defense-oriented team at this point with a lot of interchangeable pieces that shot 8 of 17 from three-point range yesterday. I don't think that Lightning is going to be striking twice, as just need a little bit more down low out of Mugan Guath, who is a 7-footer as a freshman that's still learning the ropes. I do think that with Oregon, the experience, and especially in the backcourt with having a guy that's able to give you about 4 or so assists per contest in Jackson Shellset, going to be able to get the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 5 with this Oregon team, and so I total 137.5 in on the under. 747, 748 on the betting board. It is Texas A&M, and they're going to be on the road. They're going to be facing off against Creighton. Well, neutral court game. Both of these teams are in lovely Las Vegas, and right now with Texas A&M, they're a 4 to a 3.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 143.5, and I set Texas A&M as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 5. Ryan Kalkbrenner is a guy that was pretty stocked up on night number 1 after he had 49 points, but it appears as though Ryan Kalkbrenner turns into a pumpkin against good teams, because he has had like 2 buckets against his last 2 opponents in San Diego State along with Nebraska. And for Kalkbrenner, while the numbers look really nice, he's still giving you about 20 points. He's still giving you north of 8 rebounds per game. Again, a lot of that came against the teams like FDU, against UMKC, Rio Grande Valley, teams like this, and now he has to go up against the Texas A&M team that was number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of offensive rebound rate last season. They've got a lot of those guys back, like Anderson Garcia, Henry Coleman, Farrell Payne, who are all giving you 5+ rebounds per game. And then Zarique Phelps along with Wade Taylor in the backcourt. They entered into yesterday combining for 30 points, 7 assists. Not going to get a lot of 3-point shooting out of Phelps, and this is an A&M team that was outside the top 300 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage from a season ago. So I don't think that they're going to do the same thing that San Diego State did yesterday and shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, but it is a Texas A&M team that has improved with their offense from a season ago. They themselves had a little bit of a tough time with Oregon yesterday, but I do think that they're going to be able to clean things up here against a Creighton team that I've talked about this for a while. They just don't have necessarily the world's greatest amount of depth. Pops Isaacs, he's now going to have the ball in his hands a lot along with Jemiah Neal. Neal's a little bit of a do-it-all sort of guy that comes in from Arizona State, but just 5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists in the game yesterday. Overall for the season, has been able to give you more like 9 points, 5 rebounds, but not a guy that's going to give you a lot from the outside. Pops Isaacs, while he is able to give you a little bit of facilitation, and it's a bit of a matchup nightmare, he's someone that, once again, for his career, he shoots about 34% from 3-point, and now that element of Creighton of being able to light you up from 3, it's just gone. They're shooting 30% from 3-point, and they're turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest, and they don't turn you over. So do you think that this is going to be a rough one against the Texas A&M team that I think is going to be able to control the boards? So seeing right now a total of 144 in a few spots, so I total 143.5, 144 or higher. I'm in on the under. And I'm willing to lay this number with A&M. 749, 750 on the betting board. It is Rutgers. They're playing against Alabama. No numbers currently up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I've set Alabama as an 8.5 point favorite and set my total at a 162.5. 162 or less, and on the over 163 or higher. The under, I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Alabama, 9 or more. Take those points with Rutgers. Rutgers just played a nip and tuck game against Notre Dame as I'm recording this, and had an Alabama team that had an overtime winner against Houston. So got a lot of teams that are coming off of very, very exhausting games the day before, but I mean, Dylan Harper really was the star for Rutgers yesterday. He's been able to log for the team 20 points and just really good versatility in general. Gives you 5 boards, gives you 5 assists. Ace Bailey just feels like he's a little bit more of a feast or famine guy. He certainly had a good first 3 performances for his career, and then yesterday had a little bit of a fall off, but the one guy that you do want to be keeping in mind for this Rutgers team is Lathon Somerville, who entered into yesterday with 5 rebounds per game. They're going to need him down low because this is a Alabama unit that now they've got Grant Nelson with his versatility, standing right around 6'10", 6'11". He's able to shoot in the high 30s from 3-point range. He's able to give you quite a bit in terms of 14 plus points, 5 plus boards per contest. And Cliff Amarui, well, no love lost here. He was over on Rutgers a season ago, and he's going to be able to dominate down low. As you've got Jordan Durcock on the flip side for Rutgers, who does a little bit of everything at 6'6". Coming from Merrimack, he's been able to give the team 7 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, but he doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3. And for Alabama, they entered into yesterday shooting just 30.8% from 3-point range. you knew that Mark Sears was going to be able to give you a little bit more there. Latrell Wrightsell, he's a good spot-up shooter that's currently shooting in the high 30s from three-point range. Aiden Holloway is starting to find his footing with regards to this offense as well. And despite how fast Alabama goes, going into yesterday, just 10.5 turnovers per game, they're very efficient with regards to their offense. Rutgers is a team that's very much looking to play a little bit more up and down. They got a little bit stuck in the mud yesterday against Notre Dame. Not too surprised there, but I do think that Alabama going to get their up-tempo style and dominate down low. So I'm going to lay up to 8 with this Alabama team, 9 or more taking those points with Rutgers, and then 162 or less and on the over 163 or higher. The under 751, 752 on the betting board. Houston and Notre Dame do battle. No numbers up on this game from lovely Las Vegas, but want to lay up to 11 with Houston, 12 or more taking those points with Notre Dame, and then 133 or less and on the over 134 or higher, the under. And this is just how brutal college basketball is right now. I do feel like Houston is one of the top 5 teams in all of college basketball. They've already taken 2 losses thus far this season, and for Notre Dame, they're a very well-coached team. They're a very cerebral team, but that said, it's just a unit that I think is going to be outgunned in this game. I absolutely love what you've been able to get out of Marcus Burton. He's giving you 20 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, just impacts winning in so many different ways, but he had 2 more points than myself yesterday as he went out with an injury, and if he's injured in this game, by the way, because I do not know his status, we are recording this a little bit more on the fly, but if he's out of the fold, I would have to adjust this to more like a 13.5 with regards to Rutgers, so I do want to throw that out there. I'm assuming as if he is playing. I made that line ahead of time, but looks like he is injured in this game, so that's not great. And if he is indeed injured, you're probably going to be seeing a little bit more out of Logan Imes, who's a guy that's not quite a few minutes yesterday. Tay Davis, he's someone that's able to give you double figures at 6'5", nice versatility. And Brendan Shrewsbury is a good 3-point shooter, but it's a Notre Dame team that they really can't afford Marcus Burton being out, because this is a Houston team that they do such a good job of just being able to execute the little things, being able to win the rebound battle with Javon Roberts, Joseph Tugler doing a nice job being able to give this team right around about 5.5 or so rebounds per contest. Milo Suzanne has been able to do a really good job of taking on that Jamal Shed role. He doesn't give you a ton of scoring with about 8 points per contest, but about 4 to 4.5 rebounds per game, 6 assists per contest. Love what he's bringing to the table. LJ Cryer, he's able to be that closeout scorer that's shooting north of 40% from 3. He has entered in yesterday shooting 48% from 3-point range. You knew that that was not going to be long lasting, but this is a Houston unit that they just do a good job sucking the life out of you. They have now given up fewer than 60 points in all but 2 of their games this far this season, as they do a nice job just being able to control things in general with regards to the tempo. And if Marcus Burton is out, I'm going to be slashing this as well, and I'm anticipating Marcus Burton probably being out of the fold. So you know what? We are going to go with a 13 or less. Want to lay with Houston, 14 or more, taking those points with Notre Dame, and then 131 or less in on the over 132 or higher. The under 753, 754 on the betting board. Now we head out to the great state of Florida. It's South Carolina and Virginia Tech doing battle, with Virginia Tech find themselves as 5-point underdogs. Still on this game between 139.5 and 140.5, and with Virginia Tech, I did set them as a underdog of 5 points in this spot. So it is a game where right now it's a little bit TBD. If you get north of 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Virginia Tech. I was seeing a lot of 4.5 a little bit earlier as well. If we could get back to a 4.5, I'm willing to lay with South Carolina. It's a South Carolina unit that I'm not very bullish on. It's a Virginia Tech unit that I am very bearish on. It's Heisier Miller, the gentleman that is currently in the gambling scandal. Yeah, the point shaving scandal. He was supposed to be their point guard. He is not out there on the floor, and he's not going to be this year. Brandon Rechsteiner instead has had to really give this Virginia Tech team a bit of facilitation, giving out 3 assists per contest. Toby Lual has been great down low for Virginia Tech, 13 points, 7 boards, but not a guy that is really going to be able to dish out the ball, and has been turning the ball over about 3.5 times per contest, and this is just not Virginia Tech-like. They're turning the ball over north of 15 times per contest. For South Carolina, you tell how badly they need Michi Johnson back, because they're turning the ball over 12 times per contest, shooting only about 31.5% from 3-point range. You've been able to have Jacoby Wright along Jamari Thomas be able to step up in the backcourt. With Wright, he's been able to give you about 12 points per game, and Thomas, they're both shooting about 35% from 3. Thomas, a little bit more of an off-the-ball scorer that's able to give you 12.5 points per contest as well, but I was expecting a lot more out of Nick Pringle, who comes on over from Alabama. He's been able to give you 7 boards, 9 points per contest, but thought that he would be able to help out a little bit more with Colin Murray Boyles, who just feels like he has to do everything. 15.5 points, 8.5 boards, a block, a steal per contest. He's actually shot 66% from 3, albeit on a very small sample size, but not a lot of depth here. Miles Sute gives you a little bit of versatility, but it's more than what you've got for Virginia Tech right now, as they've had Michael Poteet have to do a little bit of everything, a guy that I was never bullish on to start with. He's been able to give you 12.5 points, points, 5 boards, but is not able to give you any sort of 3-point shooting. Ben Burnham, who's come in from Charleston, is giving you just 4 points per contest, so I'd be willing to go 4.5 or less, willing to lay that with South Carolina. If we go past a 5, I'd be willing to take those points with Virginia Tech, and did set my total at 141. I do think that this is close enough for late game filling, and I do think that both of these teams, while they're also taking a fall off with regards to their offense, have also taken a step back on defense. So looking at the over and looking at 4.5 or less with South Carolina, 755, 756. This may be my write-up as well. Xavier is going to be playing against Michigan out there in Florida, and Michigan 1.5 to 2-point favorites. Total on this game is 152, and with Michigan, I did set them as the underdog in this spot. I like Xavier outright on the money line. I felt like Xavier should have been a 3.5-point favorite. It's the next men team that has been able to do a really good job down low with Zach Fremantle, give you all sorts of versatility, 14 plus points, 7 plus boards, and over the last 2 years, it shot north of 50% from 3-point range. I should say in this case 3 years, because he missed all of last season due to injury and has picked up right where he left off. Meanwhile, it's a Michigan unit that is just too sloppy with the ball. They are currently outside the top 330 in terms of percentage of possessions that end in a turnover. That's not what you want to see, north of 16 turnovers per game. I love what Danny Wolf brings to the table. 9 points, 9 boards, a steal, a block. He's able to pop it from 3-point range. So it's actually been 6 of 10 Sam Walters, who's been shooting north of 45% from 3-point range for this unit. Trey Donaldson, who comes in from Auburn, about 4 assists per game, but it just feels like they don't know the decorum with regards to the backcourt in this point. Roddy Gale, who comes on over from Ohio State, he's been able to give you 13 points per contest, but it's a Xavier team that they've got a lot more of their T's crossed and their I's dotted, with having a guy in Davion McKnight doing a great job being efficient with the ball. 4.8 assists and 1.2 turnovers per contest, 12.5 points for a team that's currently shooting 40% from 3, north of 80% at the free throw line. This team is really doing the little things well, and everyone's getting minutes. Even someone like a Dante Maddox, who he's not going to see a ton of minutes, but at the same time, still giving the team 5.5 points per contest after being a top flight scorer over at Toledo. You've had Ryan Conwell come on over from Indiana State. He's supplying the team with 17.5 points, a little bit of a one-trick pony, but he's been shooting north of 45% from 3-point range, and I do think that Michigan is going to have a little bit of a tough time guarding the 3-point arc, and just the camaraderie of Xavier has me on them. So I'm willing to take Xavier outright on the money line, and did set my total at 155.5. This is a Xavier team that's really looking to run. They're really playing some efficient basketball, so like the over and the money line of Xavier. 757, 758 on the betting board. This is over at the Hard Rock Hotel out there in Mexico, as we've right now got ourselves Tulane and Belmont doing battle, and there's no numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I set Belmont as a 2-point favorite and a total of 156, so 155.5 or less in on the over 156.5 or higher. The under with Belmont, willing to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more. Take those points with the Tulane Green Wave, with Tulane just an absolute toilet bowl performance for them late in that game against Wyoming. They looked like they were in full control, 16 plus point lead. They scored like 50 plus points in the first 13 minutes of the second half, and final 13 minutes of the game, they scored 11 points. So that was not great to say the least. You've got Caleb Banks, who's been able to give you 17.5 points, 8 boards. He's able to shoot it relatively well from 3-point range. And Mike Jordan, he's been able to come in, give the team 10 points as a true freshman, but it's a little bit of a top-heavy team. Michael Ealy, who comes on over from Siena, is really giving you a big, giant nothing burger. I was expecting a bit more down low out of Percy Daniels as well. 6'10" big man has only been able to give you about 2.5 or so rebounds per game after he was a reserve a season ago that I thought was going to take that next step forward. Rome Brumba, 5.5 assists per game. Team isn't turning the ball over a ton, but that was very much less than savory what we saw against Wyoming yesterday. And for Belmont, held to 63 points yesterday against Loyola Marymount. I do think that they're going to bounce back here. You've got a guy in Carter Wood who's able to give you north of 4 assists per game, and I like the overall scoring that you've been able to get out of the Liberty transfer and Brody Pebbles. Pebbles has been able to give you 11.5 points per contest. Last year shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. That's below 30% thus far this season. We should be able to see that bounce back a little bit more, but what I want to see a little bit more of is Jean Pierre. Why they're bringing him off the bench, I have no idea, but 6'9" combo player that comes over from Nova Southeastern. That was the team that won the national title at the Division II ranks 2 seasons ago. Like yesterday, he went 3 of 5 from 3. He gave the team 17 points, 4 assists in 23 minutes. That's a guy that they need to be featuring a little bit more. You've been able to get quite a bit of something in terms of facilitation out of Isaiah Walker as well. He's supplying the team with about 11 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, so really good versatility there after he was a starter last season, and his career about 33 to 34% 3-point shooter, but I'm just starting to be all the way out on a Tulane team that they're still playing relatively up-tempo, but they've really slowed things down from where they were a season ago. Meanwhile, this is a Belmont team that's turning down for absolutely nobody whatsoever. They have given up now at least 73 points in all but one of their games against a Division I team thus far this season. Do think that Belmont going to be giving it up here, and I do think that you get an up and down game. Willing to lay up to 1.5 with Belmont, 2.5 or more, taking those points with Tulane, and then 155.5 or less. I like the over 156.5 or higher, the under 759, 760 on the betting board. It is Loyola Marymount, and they're going to be playing against Wyoming out there in Mexico. I said Loyola Marymount as a 2.5 point favorite, so want to lay up to 2 with them, 3 or more, taking those points with Wyoming, and somebody total where a 138 or less. I'm in on the over 139 or higher, the under. A very good effort yesterday from Wyoming on the defensive side of things towards the back half of the second half, but I do think that Loyola Marymount just has a little bit more talent in general in this game. Will Johnson has been a part of the backcourt for quite a while, doing a nice job, giving the team 14.5 points per contest, and Jevin Porter, I think that he's just got too much versatility in this game. At 6'11", he's able to supply the team with about 14 points, nearly 10 boards. At 6'11", he's of relation to Michael Porter. He's able to pop it from 3-point range as well. Alex Merkfeldez is able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Not necessarily a ton of depth with this team, but if you could get Myron Amy and John Vide going, a pair of guys are averaging about 8.5 points per contest, it's going to pay dividends for a Loyola Marymount team that has been pretty smart with the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 10 times per contest. That's something that Wyoming needs to clean up. Wyoming, when they've been on the road this season, they've been averaging north of 14 turnovers per contest, and that includes neutral court games. The only shooting is collective about 31.5% from 3-point range, but do have a nice go-to scorer, so you've been able to get north of 17 points per game out of Obi Agium. He's been able to give you about 3 assists per contest as well, but outside of him, you don't necessarily have a lot from the outside. Jordan Nesbitt has been a do-it-all guy coming in from Hampton, 11 points, 7 boards. Like Kobe Dune, he's been able to give you right around about 3 assists per contest, but he only gave the team 2 points and 1 assist in that game yesterday against Tulane. Has been a really nice plus defender, and this Wyoming team, one of their main themes has been being able to pound the boards. As if you had Tuki Tanamo have a reduction in scoring from Denver last season, but an increase in terms of his defense. Cole Henry has done a nice job coming in as a 6'9" big man that's able to give you some boards, not necessarily give you a lot in terms of versatility, but just be able to crash the glass. But that said, do think that Loyola Marymount just too much versatility, and they get the job done. Willing to lay up to 2 with the Loyola Marymount Lions, 3 or more, taking those points with Wyoming, and then 138 or less, and on the over 139 or higher, the under 761, 762 on the betting board. It is Cal Baptist taking on Fresno St. This is out there in the great state of California, and right now with Cal Baptist, I set them as a favorite of 7.5 points with a total of 145.5. Want to lay up to 7 with Cal Baptist, 8 or more, taking those points for Fresno State, and then 145 or less, and on the over 146 or higher, the under. Now, truth be told, doing this as Fresno State versus Washington State has yet to go final. I am assuming that Fresno State is not going to come back and get the job done, and if so, I will leave on the old Twitter/X feed the updated handicap for these final 2 games on the normal Las Vegas betting board. But that said, this is a Cal Baptist unit that they seem to be playing a little bit more up-tempo this year, which I do like to see, because this is a unit that they've always been a little bit too muted for my liking in terms of their offense, because they've had a lot of explosive players. They've got some like an AJ Braun who comes on over and he's able to give you a double-figure amount of points, 7+ rebounds per game after he was over at Wright State a season ago. Dominique Daniels is back after he was averaging darn near 20 points per contest from a season ago as well. And you saw Cal Baptist do a really nice job against SMU of being able to match them shot for shot. They went 9 of 17 from 3-point range yesterday. Don't think that they're going to duplicate that. But Kendall Coleman, who 2 seasons ago was over at Northwestern State, he was able to give the team a double-double. He's really stepped up. He had 32 points in the game yesterday. Flip side for Fresno State, under Vance Wahlberg, they're looking to play a little bit more up-tempo, but not really bullish on Vance Wahlberg, to say the least. He did bring with him some really good junior college transfers, as you had a top 10 guy rated by JUCORecruiting.com, and Amar Ulyagard, who's been able to give you north of 18 points per contest. You've got more Sec down low, I really like it as well. 7-footer from Hawaii, who's able to give you 6.5 boards, a block per contest, just makes things a little bit yucky in general, but it's a Fresno State team that entered into yesterday, shooting about 26% from 3-point range. This is a Cal Baptist team just flowing some better offense and looking to play with a little bit more pace, and Fresno State looking to crank things up tempo a little bit more as well. So 145 or less, I like the over. 146 or higher, the under. 1 to lay up to 7 with Cal Baptist. 8 or more taking those points with Fresno State, and this is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we get the extra games. It is 763, 764, with it being SMU and Washington State. I set SMU as a 4-point favorite and a total of 162, so 1 to lay up to 3.5 with SMU, 4.5 or more taking those points with Washington State, and then 161.5 or less, and on the over 162.5 or higher, the under. It's a SMU team that is very much looking to crank it up tempo, and they have been able to do so very well thus far this season. They were able to score 79 points in the game yesterday, and when it comes to this SMU unit. It is the team that has been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to take care of the ball as well, which has been much to my surprise, but bringing Kevin Boopy Miller over from Wake Forest, he's been a double-figure scorer that's been able to give you some nice facilitation. You've got a lot of guys who are just able to crash the glass as well. You bring in someone like a Juan Traore, who was over at Santa Barbara last season with 5+ boards, 14+ points per game. Samet Yedoglu, he has come over from the country of Turkey at 7'2". Not going to give you versatility, but does a good job jamming things up down low. He's got some nice post moves as well. BJ Edwards, just a guy that does a little bit of everything. He had 17 points yesterday. You need him to be a plus defender. He'll do that. He just does whatever it takes to be a win. And Kerry Oquendo is becoming a really nice off-the-ball scorer, along Chuck Harris as well. And then on the flip side, you've got a Washington State team that is pretty much the 2.0 version of Eastern Washington from a season ago. A whole bunch of guys with size. They're able to light you up from three-point range, as you've been able to have Cedric Howard do a nice job getting the team double figures, 6+ rebounds per game. Ethan Price is a guy that stands right around 6'9", 6'10", along with as well Dane Erickstrup. Both of those guys able to give you double figures, able to give you some good three-point shooting. And then they also bring in Nick Kalmezi, who was a double-figure scorer over at Lamar 2 seasons ago. He's had to be a little bit more of a main facilitator. That has been a little bit sucked down on this team, but overall I think that you get an up and down game. And in the end, I just think that SMU has a little bit more talent, though I did award a little bit for Washington State being out there on the West Coast, and this is going to be a late game. So 3.5 for less, 1 to lay it with SMU, 4.5 for more, taking the points with Washington State, and then 161.5 for less, and on the over 162.5 for higher, the under, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-573, 306-574. It is Eastern Kentucky, and they're going to be facing off against Louisiana Tech. The only place I'm seeing a number up on this game is over at FanDuel, and right now they're opening up with Louisiana Tech, a 10.5 point favorite, and total on this game is 140.5, and I set my total at a 146.5, even though this is going to be an early game that's going to be tipping off at noon Eastern time. Do think that you're going to get quite a few points up on the board. It's an Eastern Kentucky team that, at their core, they're a team that they generate quite a few turnovers. They've been changing around their style a little bit over the last few seasons, but with Louisiana Tech, you do have the Bacho man, Daniel Bacho, who's been really good down low. He's able to give you darn near a double-double. He's been able to supply the team with nearly 10 rebounds per game. Going into yesterday, packing in there north of 20 points per contest, but he is going to be going up against Savante Bland. He's got really good versatility at 6'6". For the season, he's been able to supply the team with north of 6 rebounds per contest, 3 assists, throwing in there about 16 points per game, and is currently shooting in the high 30s from three-point range for Eastern Kentucky. George Kimball, he's been able to give you some nice facilitation with right around about 5 assists per game. Does need to cut down on the turnovers, so as he's been turning the ball over darn near 4 times per contest as well. This is a Louisiana Tech team that they've been one of the best teams in all of college basketball in terms of steals, along with Eastern Kentucky, and they've got a little bit more efficiency at the point guard spot with Sean Newman Jr. giving you 10 assists, 1.8 turnovers per game. Team has been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, but they've been looking to go a little bit more up-tempo with Amari Abraham, Caden Cooper being able to supply the team with a good end about 31.5 points per game. Do think they get a little bit more of an up-and-down battle for Eastern Kentucky. Had a little bit of a slog in their first game in this event against Ball State. Things got kicked up a tempo a little bit more against Southern Illinois, and this is a Louisiana Tech team that's been really good in terms of their offense. The 65 that they scored yesterday against Richmond, pretty much a lone time this season that they've been held below 75. So did set my total 146.5, like the over, and at 9+, going to be willing to take those points with Eastern Kentucky. 306-575, 306-576. It is UMBC, and they play us some Morgan State. Morgan State does find themselves as a 6-point underdog, seeing a 5.5 out there as well. Total on this game is 160. Did set my total at 166.5. Do like the over. UMBC over the last few seasons has been really the fastest team in all of college basketball, if not the fastest, a top 10 team in terms of that, in terms of total possessions per game. Morgan State is a team that's looking to fly as well, and they've got Winston Tabbs, who began his career over at Boston College. He's been able to do a nice job being able to supply this team with 16.5 points per contest for a team that they do shoot about 32.5% from three, but you have to be fearful of their 15.5 turnovers per game. They've got Will Thomas back from seasons ago. He's been able to give you about 9.5 points per contest, but would like to see a little bit more there. Like what I'm seeing out of Amari Simpkins. Simpkins, 2.5 assists, 5 boards, 13.5 points. He's able to shoot about 40% from three-point range, but on the flip side, you've got a UMBC team that has Bryce Johnson, who's been able to supply the team with about 16.5 points per game. Marcus Banks has done a nice job giving you 5 boards, a little bit over a steal per game, and overall, it's a bunch in UMBC that stays pretty efficient. 10.5 turnovers per game. They shoot 38.5% from three. They don't have a ton down low, but Josh Odowundu, who he comes over from Columbia, is able to give you about 5 boards per contest as well. For UMBC, they're not necessarily facing off against a large team in Morgan State. Daniel Akatobi, who's been able to give you about 6 boards per contest. He's got a little bit of an edge there, but do think that with UMBC and their high-flying style, they're going to be able to get the job done for UMBC. Certainly has been a team that has been giving up quite a few points, 75-plus in each of their last 3 games. And for Morgan State, it's been a team that they've been giving it up quite a bit themselves and has been able to exceed the 80-point plateau in 3 out of their 5 games as well, their last 5 games. So I'm going to be looking at the over as I did set my total at 166.5, and with UMBC, willing to lay up to 8 with them. I think that the backcourt dominates this game. 3-6-5-77, 3-6-5-78. It is Bryant, and they're going to be on the road facing up against Chattanooga, and there's no numbers up on this game because these 2 teams played yesterday. But that said, I've got my handicap with Chattanooga, willing to lay up to 3 with them, 4 more, taking those points with Bryant, and then with this total, a 159 or less, I'm in on the over. A 160 or higher, I'm going to be in on the under for Chattanooga. It's just all about getting their main guards back online, as they had a really rough 3-point shooting season to start out with because they went out west. They had nothing whatsoever out of Trey Bonham along with Honor Huff, who seems to be building themselves back up. Last year, they combined to average about 33 points per contest. Both shot above 38% from 3-point range. Entering into yesterday, they were averaging a combined about 24 points per game, and both were shooting below 26% from 3-point range, with Bash Weiland, the transfer from Bellarmine, being the main steadying force with about 14 points per contest. Not too much of a facilitator, and what this team is going to be really lacking is down low. You really don't have a lot of size with this team, as you've been able to get about 5 or so rebounds per game and a little bit under 8 points per game out of Garrett Kessler. He's a guy that can be able to give you a little bit of versatility at 6'7", comes in from the non-D1 ranks, but has been a little bit hairy there. And I do think that for Chattanooga, they should be able to get back on track with regards to their backcourt. And right now, I'm seeing a number at FanDuel with Chattanooga being a 3.5 point favorite. If we were to get this, I'd be willing to take the points with Bryant, as with Bryant, you've got Rafael Pinzon, who's been able to give you about 17 points per contest. For Bryant, this is a team that overall is shooting about 38% from 3-point range, as a team that over the last 3 seasons has been in the top 25 every year. In terms of total possessions per game, they should be able to control things down low. Barry Evans, Connor Withers, they've been able to combine for about 11.8 rebounds per game. Evans is able to supply 14 points per game, and Earl Timberlake bringing sexy back. A steal, a block, 8 rebounds, 14 points, 4.5 assists per contest. Absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table. And for this Bryant team, in past seasons, they haven't necessarily had a lot of depth. They've got much more of that this season. For Bryant, they're coming off of a game yesterday where they put up a 97 spot on Tennessee State. Do have to wonder if they're going to be a little bit gassed after yesterday's game, and don't think that they're going to shoot 14 of 26 from 3-point range like they did yesterday, but they also lost the turnover battle 21-10 and still got the job done by 12 points. So I think that you're going to get a high-flying game at a 155.5. I'd be in on this total over, as I set my total more around a 159.5, and at a 3.5 or more, that's going to be my buy point on Bryant. If we can get a 4, even better, but we'll be looking at Bryant at that 3.5 plus and looking at the over. 3-6-5-79, 3-6-5-80. It is Tennessee Tech, and they are going to be playing as the Presbyterian, and Presbyterian finds themselves strangely as a 5-point favorite, and your total on this game is 134.5. And personally, I thought that Tennessee Tech belonged as a 6.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be taking them outright on the money line. For Presbyterian, I know that they've had a few okay results thus far, but feels like it's a little bit of a backcourt in transition. I've liked what I've seen out of Tennessee Tech as well. Keep in mind, night number 1 of the season, they played Georgia to within single digits. They just went on the road against Central Florida. I recognize that they didn't get the job done, but they played them to within 11 points as well. And while Presbyterian has been able to go 5-3 to begin the season, when they went to Kennesaw State, they lose that game by double figures. They've been beating up on the likes of Monmouth, Youngstown St, teams that I think have big names, but they're really not that great in general. They've been able to get quite a bit down low out of Jonah Pierce, who's been able to give you 13 points, 7 boards per contest. And for this Presbyterian team, they are shooting 39% from the outside, but also 65% at the free throw line. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team. You've been able to have Caleb Scott step up with about 6 points, 4 boards per contest, and you've got a guy with the last name Peterson who's able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game. We always like that in Jalen Peterson. But when it comes to the Tennessee Tech team, like what Rodney Johnson has been able to bring to the table, lots of versatility. Main scorer with 14 points, 5 boards. He's been able to shoot 50% from the outside. Tennessee Tech, they've been turning the ball over just 11.5 times per contest, so they've been able to keep things in line there. And what is big for this team as well, they've got Makai Cameron back, who he was missing for a few games for this unit. He's someone that I think is going to be able to go out there, give this team some nice versatility at the guard spot, as he was just glued to the bench last season while he was over at Northern Colorado. Do think that he's going to be able to step in, give the team some good contributions after I know that he was a pretty highly touted junior college transfer coming in as well. It's a bunch in Tennessee Tech as well that they do a relatively good job of being able to find some good facilitation. Daniel Agaboni, hopefully I said that correctly, the big man, is able to give you north of 3 assists per contest. And then Jalen Johnson, just been a stat sheet suffer, 12 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, has stepped in as a non-D1 transfer and has been able to do a really nice job of being able to uplift this this offense. Do you think that the wrong team is favored? Tennessee Tech, not necessarily the biggest team down low, but I do think that they're going to do a good job against Pierce and find a way to be able to get the job done in this one. So I do like the money line here with Tennessee Tech. I set them as a 6.5 point favorite, set my total 144.5 as well. Feel like this total is a little bit too low. Both of these teams have been seeing their offensive numbers warped a little bit by the competition that they've been playing. Tennessee Tech still has been a pretty rock solid offense. So looking at the over and the money line with Tennessee Tech, 306.581, 306.582. This is going to be a game that makes my write-up as you've got Baylor, and they are going to be playing against New Orleans. New Orleans, a 33.5 to a 34-point underdog. Totals between 149.5 to a 150. Saw 32.5 a little bit earlier. I believe that was at FanDuel, and this is a number that I'm going to be willing to lay with Baylor, and I wrote it up. I was willing to go up to about a 37 with Baylor in this spot. For Baylor, they've played just 2 games at home this far this season. They knocked off Sam Houston State 104 to 67, and then against Charleston State, they won that game by north of 60. They've been able to take it to outmatched competition. Right now, you've got a New Orleans team that's outside the top 300 in terms of both rebound rate and in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. James White has done a good job stepping in, being able to supply the team with 20.5 points per contest. And for New Orleans, they've also had them do a nice job on the boards with about 8.5 rebounds per game. But outside that, you don't have a lot going on. MJ Thomas has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds as a 6'8" freshman, so he's been a little bit of an upside piece. But his team has always had an issue with being able to maintain just possession of the ball. They're turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest, and this is a Baylor team that's much improved in terms of being able to generate turnovers, nearly 9 steals per game with VJ Edgecombe. Not necessarily doing a lot in terms of like outside shooting, but he's giving you just a little bit of everything. 3.5 assists, 2 steals, 6 boards, 12 points, and then you've got Nochad Omier averaging a double-double for the team. Jeremy Roach, he's starting to find his 3-point shot, shooting 39.5% from the outside, and for Baylor, they were really your number 1 team in all of college basketball last year in terms of 3-point shooting percentage at home. Took a pretty big fall off when they were on the road, and for New Orleans, this is a team that has proven time and time again that they are very willing to give up the points. They have given up at least 74 in every one of their games against T1 competition thus far this season. It's a Baylor team that really has their offense cranked up. They have scored 99 plus in 3 of their last 4 games, held down a little bit in that final against Tennessee, but I do think that Baylor going to take out their frustrations from that loss against a New Orleans team that's just completely outgunned. They're not able to take care of it in the backcourt, and I do think that Baylor, with Jaden Nunn being able to improve year in and year out, they're going to be able to have a nice convincing win and help out their net ranking. So it's a circumstance where I wrote up Baylor laying this big number. I was willing to go up to 37 and did set my total 153.5. I think that Baylor's naming their score on New Orleans. So I'm going to have the over and willing to lay this big number, 306.583, 306.584. Austin Peay is going to be playing against UT Arlington. This is from Florida State College, and currently you have no numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap as I did set UT Arlington as a 4.5 point favorite and made my total of 152.5. So at a 4 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay it with UT Arlington, 5 or more, going to be willing to take those points with Austin Peay. And then with a 152 or less, I'm going to be in on the over at 153 or higher. I'm going to be in on this total under. Right now, not seeing any openers on this one. So if I do see one, I'll let you know. But that said, with this UT Arlington team, they're a team that's really looking to play up-tempo. They're looking to play very, very much with pace. Meanwhile, you've got an Austin Peay team that's content being outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give for UT Arlington. They've got quite a bit of outside shooting as they've been able to have Jaden Wells step up, give the team 17.5 points per contest. They were held down by Murray State yesterday. They were only able to get to 66 in that one as they went 4 of 17 from 3-point range, but do you think that they're going to be able to bounce back here as they've got a guy in Mr. Lance Ware who's been able to supply the team with a little bit more of something. Made his season debut yesterday, and he was over at Kentucky for a while, former top 50 recruit that just couldn't get out there on the floor last year over at Villanova, and he made his debut with 26 points, 9 rebounds, and I think that he is going to be a dominator for this team, and I think that that's really a big multiplier for UT Arlington. Without him, this would probably be closer to a 2.5 point line. Darius Burford, he's been able to come in after he spent last season over at Illinois State. He's been a north of 40% 3-point shooter with 10 points, being able to supply about 5.5 rebounds per game, and now having that dominator down low and Ware, that gives them a nice advantage down low against an Austin Peay team that has been having a little bit of a tough time finding their footing in terms of their rebounding, as LJ Thomas has had to do it all. He's given you 20 points, 4 boards, 3+ assists per contest, so he's really been that do-it-all guy coming in from NC State, and the big thing that they need, Austin Peay does, is Cy Witt to be able to pick it up. He's at 6'8" last season, did give the team more around about 5.5 boards, 12.5 points per contest, and this season he's giving you more like 10 points, 4 boards, hasn't really been able to build off of that. Isaac Haney is a nice 3-point shooter, and it's really one of the main guys returning from the season ago. Ansel Emmanuel, the one-armed wonder, has been able to give you 4.5 points, 4.5 boards, so he's been able to give you some nice contributions as well. And for Austin Peay, they're always a pretty well-disciplined team. Corey Gibson does a good job of being able to preach the little things. Right now, shooting 78% at the free throw line. They're only turning the ball over to about 10 times per contest, but do think that with Arlington getting Ware back in the fold, that is going to be big for them being able to control this game. So looking to lay up to 4 here with Arlington, 5 or more. Take the points with Austin P and then 152 or less, and on the over 153 or higher, the under 306-585, 306-586. It is North Dakota State, and they're going to be taking on West Georgia. This is another game without numbers, but it's a game where I've got my handicap as I did set West Georgia as a 8.5 point underdog, 9 or more going to be taking those points with West Georgia, 8 or less, 1 to lay with North Dakota State, and then 144 or less in on the over, 145 or higher, the under. Have to wonder how much gas is going to be left in the tank for North Dakota State after they go to overtime with Samford, so that's a bit of an issue. And West Georgia, a really spirited effort yesterday. They play within a possession against Utah Valley, so that's something that's a big confidence booster for a bunch. And ever since they joined the D1 ranks, it's just been a little bit of a struggle for West Georgia. They have yet to be able to knock off a Division I team at this level, but they have been able to have Shelton Williams-Dryden, who stands right around about 6'6", comes in from the great state of Wisconsin, being able to deliver for this team down low, right around about 16.5 points, 7 boards. So like what he's able to bring to the table for the North Dakota State team, they've been able to pick it up in terms of their three-point shooting. Going into yesterday, shooting 34% from the outside. Yesterday they shot it relatively well as well, with Chikari White being the main guy, averaging going into yesterday 17 points per contest. And Jackson Moni, he at 6'10", has all sorts of versatility, about 5 boards, 12 points. He's able to give you some facilitation as well. He's able to give you a little bit of three-point shooting, and that's just a North Dakota State specialty. And for North Dakota State, again, 20 of 39 from three-point range yesterday. I don't think that Lightning is going to be striking twice, but they finally got unlocked Luke Kazabuke, who going into yesterday, he was averaging only about 4 to 5 points per contest. Former Illinois State and Kansas State transfer who's always been a career mid-30s three-point shooter, had been relatively rough to begin the season, and as a matter of fact, he had scored, I believe it was prior to the 21 points yesterday, a grand total of 17 points all season long, so I don't think that is going to be happening once again. It is a team that's looking to Mason Miller, the transfer from Indiana State, to give them a little bit as well, and they should be able to get the job done. West Georgia in a lot of transition after Zwade Jackson, their top scorer from season ago. He elected to go to New Mexico State, but that said, you still have been able to get a little bit out of someone like a Tyrese Relaford, who's been able to give you about 5.5 to 6 points per contest, and Colton Griffin has stepped up in a big way. He's supplying the team with about 11.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest. So 8 or less one to lay with North Dakota State. 9 or more taking those points with West Georgia. And West Georgia, I sense, trying to go a little bit more up-tempo. So 144 or less, and on the over 145 or higher. The under 306-587, 306-588. Morehead State is going to be playing against NJIT. This is a neutral court game over at Wolstein Center, and this is a game where I've got my handicap. I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Morehead State. 9 or more taking those points with NJIT. And then with this total 134 or less, I'm in on the over 135 or higher, the under. It's been a less than savory run of things thus far for Morehead State. They lose their coach in Preston Spradlin from the offseason, and they lose 4 of their top 5 scorers from a season ago as well. But they've been able to get a lot of production out of Kenny White Jr., guy that has been in the OVC for quite a while. Believe he began his career over at Tennessee Tech, played a little bit of time over at Murray State as well. 13 points, 5.5 boards, 6'6" versatility that is currently shooting just 16.7% from 3. And for this Morehead State team, things are going to go northward for them. They're currently shooting 21.5% from 3-point range. Even the worst teams don't shoot 21.5% from 3-point range. And I think the big X factor for this team is the transfer from the MAC in Jalen Wyndham. Wyndham, when he was over at Ball State last season, was able to be a really nice, about 39.5% three-point shooter, and when it comes to his production over at Ball State last 2 seasons, was able to supply north of 5.5 points per contest, so he should be able to give this team a little bit of a shot in the arm. Down low, you've got Deontay Miles, who is a 7-footer, who's able to give you 5+ boards per contest, is able to do a relatively solid job down low, and the team was just dealing with injuries towards the beginning part of the season as well. You've got Jerome Morton, who, when he's been out there on the floor, has been able to give you some production in return for the last 2 games, with a combined 20 points in those 2 games, missed the first 3 or so games of the campaign, and then for this NJIT team, a really nice effort yesterday. I recognize that they still have a goose egg in the win column, but they were able to play to within 3 points against Cleveland State on the road, and Tariq Francis is really the engine that makes this team go. He's able to log about 17.5 points, 5 assists. He had, in that game yesterday, 24 of the team's 53 points. With NJIT hasn't been the world's worst defensive team. They got lit up in that game against Villanova, but past that, they haven't been too bad on that front. They just don't have a lot of scoring in general. Levi Lual has been able to give you about 4 boards per contest. You've got Sebastian Robinson, who's shipping in there about 10 points per game, but He was limited just 5 points yesterday, and he's been a career about 20% three-point shooter, so you're going to need to get a lot more there. Meanwhile, on the flip side, you've got a Morehead St team that just hasn't been able to put the ball in the bucket, but they've got a lot more down low as well. So it is an interesting circumstance here. I do think that with NJIT, going to continue to be a little bit of struggle for them, so 9 or more I would need to take the points with them, 8 or less. Willing to lay with a Morehead St team that I believe that they are 2-3 thus far this season, and 134 or less in on the over, 135 or higher the under. 3-6-5-89, 3-6-5-90. It is a bracket bust in Bucknell Bison, and they're on the road. They're facing off against Maryland. Maryland find themselves as a favorite of between 23.5 to 24 points. So on this game, you're getting that at a 138.5 to a 139, and with Bucknell, I'm willing to take the points. I set them as an 18.5 point underdog. Now, Elvin Edmonds has been out for Bucknell. That's their main point guard, and been able to do a nice job giving out about 3 or so assists per contest, but you still have quite a bit down low, including the 7-footer who he's going to have his work cut out for him. But Noah Williamson, he's able to give you 17 points, 7.5 boards, a block per contest, is able to pop some threes. Has to go up against Derek Queen along Julian Reese, and these guys have been awesome for Maryland. They've been able to supply about 31 points. With Queen, he's giving you about 8 rebounds per game. When it comes to Reese, he's been able to supply the team with about 9 boards per contest, and we've got Reese currently giving you some nice versatility. He's been able to give you a little bit of facilitation. Derek Queen has actually given out 3 assists per contest as well, but I mean, it's really been by committee for a Maryland team that they've cut down on the turnover, so about 9.5 turnovers per game. Still a rough 3-point shooting team. They're only shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range. Roddy Rice has been able to give them a nice spark. He's currently shooting 42.5% from the outside, been able to log 14 points per game after he just could never get out there on the floor for Virginia Tech due to injury. Jacoby Gillespie, who comes on over from Belmont, shooting in the mid-30s from 3 assists, 14.5 points per game, but the depth for this team isn't necessarily great. Sultan Miguel has been able to give you some nice scoring coming on over from South Florida, but Deshaun Harris-Smith has just never really materialized for this team. Jay Young hasn't been able to give you a ton either. So I do look at this Bucknell team in the backcourt with Josh Basco being able to step in that Elvin Edmonds slot in terms of being able to facilitate. And I do think that they're going to hold in there with Basco, 15 points, 3.5 assists. It's turned the ball over a little bit too much, but has been rock solid out there in the backcourt while the other guys have been sort of letting him down just a little bit. And with Bucknell, I do think that their versatility allows them to hold in this game. Did semi-total at a 140.5. We've seen Maryland actually play quite a bit better with regards to their offense. Bucknell is playing a 3-point shooting, so in on the over and at a 19 plus, we'll take the points with Bucknell. 3-6-5-91, 3-6-5-92. Western Illinois and Incarnate Word do battle. No numbers up on this game as Incarnate Word and Western Illinois were in action yesterday, but that said, I set the Word as a 2-point favorite with a total of 142, so 141.5 or less in on the over, 142.5 or higher. The under with Incarnate Word, want to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 for more, taking those points with Western Illinois. With Western Illinois, it's a team that has been a little bit wobbly in general in terms of their offense, but defense continues to be rock solid. They continue to be one of the slower teams in all of college basketball. And Incarnate Word, they must have gotten some sort of an NIL haul or something like that, because they pretty much have the backcourt of ball safe from a season ago. As for this team, they bring in Jalen Anderson, who's been the main point guard, 6.5 assists per contest, and then you've got Davion Bailey, who's been a really nice off-the-ball scorer, 15.5 points, shooting 37% from 3, and Anderson has actually been even better from 3, shooting about 43% from the outside. Down low, you've been able to get quite a bit out of both Jalen Williams and Jordan Pike. Both of these guys have been able to give you between 6.5 and 7.5 boards per contest. John Robinson, who was dealing with a little bit of an injury to begin the season, he's been able to come back. Hasn't necessarily been himself quite yet. Last season, 9 points, 4.5 boards. Right now, it's averaging about 6.5 points and 3 rebounds per game, but should be a lot for a little bit of versatility for an Incarnate Word team that's really cleaned up their act. About 10.5 turnovers per game. They aren't going to continue to shoot 43% from 3-point range. You've been able to get 55% 3-point shooting out of Dylan Heyman. That's something that's going to be drying up a little bit, especially against a Western Illinois team that, while they do leave something to be desired on offense, you saw Ryan Myers back, who has been able to give the backcourt 15.5 points. He's a mid-30s 3-point shooter. And then Marco Melitic, really like him coming on over from Long Island, about 11.5 points per contest, and is going to need to improve the 2.5 rebounds per game after they lost Jonathan Cisse, who was giving them north of 11 rebounds per game season ago. So Tay Knox has had to step up with that regard, but I do think that for Western Illinois, they're going to be able to do a solid job down low, hold in this game, and I think that Incarnate Word experiences a little bit of regression in the backcourt, but in the end gets the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 1.5 with Incarnate Word, 2.5 or more, taking those points with Western Illinois, 141.5 or less, and on the over 142.5 or higher, the under 3-6-5-93, 3-6-5-94. It is Marshall, and they're going to be playing us to South Carolina State. Another game that's going to be making my write-up, as Marshall currently an 8.5 point favorite. Totals between 146.5 to a 148. I said Marshall as a 13.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Marshall. I just think that they are going to be able to dominate this game down low. You've been able to have Nate Martin be able to give you a darn near double-double over the last 2 seasons. And then Obiana Onchele-Killian. He's a guy that stands 6'7", has some really good versatility as he's able to give you about 12 points, 6 boards. This year has not shot it well from 3-point ranges. Marshall is a collective. They should be going northward from shooting about 25% from the outside. Jalen Spear, he missed the first few games of the season. He should be able to help out from the outside as over at Florida A&M 8 seasons ago. He was able to supply 15.5 points, shot 39% from 3-point range. A little bit of a liability as a defender, but he should be able to give the team a nice boost with regards to their offense. And for South Carolina State, they're just making hockey-style line shifts at this point. They've got 11 different guys that are giving you north of 10.5 minutes per contest. They have finally found a little bit of a go-to guy in Drayton Jones, who at 6'11", he's got some nice size. He's been able to give you 12.5 points, 5.5 boards, nearly a block per contest. So do like to see that, but this is South Carolina State team that's not going to be finding a lot from the outside. Currently, they're shooting 38.5% from 3-point range, but Marshall, in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from 3-point range, they're a top 3 team in all of college basketball in terms of being able to run you off the 3-point line. So that means that Mitchell Taylor is going to have his work cut out for him as a little bit more of a main facilitator. Greer only about 30% 3-point shooter, but 7 points, 2 assists. He helps flow this offense relatively well for a South Carolina State team that they are turning the ball over about 13 times per contest. When Marshall is really humming, they're able to do a nice job in terms of being able to generate turnovers, and they've been able to get about 9.5 steals per game this season. And it's a Marshall team that has held 3 out of their 5 opponents this year to fewer than 63 points, with the lone exceptions being Toledo and Purdue, so they've been able to do a nice job on that front. South Carolina State, they've been able to do a relatively respectable job on defense as well. It's an offense that is a little bit wobbly, but both of these teams are very much looking to push tempo as well. So I do think that you're going to get an up and down game. I do think that Marshall going to be able to do a nice job of being able to guard from the outside and get the job done by winning from within. So I did set my total 153.5, like the over, and with my write-up, I did take Marshall, laying the number. I'm willing to lay up to 13 with them. 36.595, 36.596. It is Colgate. They're on the road. They're facing off against UNC Wilmington, and Wilmington is a 6.5-point favorite. Total on this game is between 145.5 to 146, and I did set my total at 142.5. I'm in on the under. Even going back to last year, Colgate was outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game. This is just not the same Colgate team, though. I do think that the disrespect has gone a little bit too far. I set my line at 4.5. I'm willing to take the points because this is also a Wilmington team that's not the same as a season ago because they're without Tazarian White. Tazarian White was really their top scorer from season ago, a guy that could really be able to mask a lot of deficiencies with this team. You've got Donovan Newby back from season ago. He's been able to log for the team 19 points per contest and currently shooting 37% from 3-point range for Wilmington, though. Last year, they were a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now they're turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game. Harlan Obiana, the 7-footer who comes over from Niagara, has not seen a lot of minutes. He's only given you about 3 rebounds per contest, so you were expecting a little bit more out of him. They bring in Joshua Corbin, who he was over at Robert Morris last season. Last 2 seasons, he was able to be a nice 36 or so percent 3-point shooter that was averaging double figures. We've seen a little bit of a dip there. And for Colgate, it's just all about getting Nicholas Luis Jacques going, as he's been able to give the team about 10.5 points per contest. He, along with Jalen Cox, have been really your main 2 guys thus far this season, though Cox deal with a little bit of an injury. He's already missed a game thus far this season. You've got down low Mr. Woodyard with Jeff Woodward being able to give you about 5.5 boards, 7 points per game, and it's a Wilmington team that really hasn't been able to use a lot of the guys with size on their roster. For Colgate, they're shooting just 30% from 3, but still efficient, only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest. Do think that 3-point shooting going to be able to improve, and do think that this is going to be a low-scoring, little bit of a slog of a game. Did set my total at 142.5, so I am in on the under, and at 5+, going to be able to take those points with Colgate. 36.597, 36.598. Cincinnati, and yes, we're on to Cincinnati. They play us Alabama State. Alabama State, 26 after 27-point dogs. Totals between 144.5 to 145.5. Set my line at 27.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Cincinnati. This Bearcats team just has so much down low. Aziz Bendango, he was the WAC Defensive Player of the Year a few seasons ago. He's able to give you multiple blocks. He's able to give you 6+ rebounds per game. You bring in Dylan Mitchell, who's come over from Texas. He's been able to give you about 7 boards per contest as well. And Jizzle James, just a much better guard than he was a season ago. Last year, wasn't able to give you a ton on offense. He was turning the ball over a little bit and wasn't able to give you too much facilitation. Has really been able to come into his own season number 2 as he's given out 5.8 assists, so 1.8 turnovers per contest with 14 points per game. Still not an amazing 3-point 3-point shooter, but you don't need him to be because you got someone like Simius Lucasius who's got all sorts of versatility at 6'6", supplying the team with 16.5 points, 4 assists, shooting north of 60% from 3. That'll be going outward as Cincinnati as a whole, they're shooting 44% from the outside. That's a little bit unrealistic to expect, but even without Dan Skillings, who's only played in one game this far this season, they have been able to do a really good job with their offense. They go up against an Alabama State team that is quite improved, and they've got to do it all. Dynamo and TJ Madlock, he is the son of Tony Madlock, the coach, and supplied the team 14.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3 assists, currently shooting 36.5% from 3, a great improvement from him, but how long lasting that's going to be is a little bit of a question mark. You've been able to get some good production out of CJ Hines, who's been able to give you 15.5 points per game, and for Alabama State, throwing the ball over just 10.5 times per game, shooting 36.5% from 3-point, but you just don't have a lot down low with this team. Madlock has been able to give you those rebounds, and other than him, only other guy that's really giving you north of 3.8 rebounds per game, Micah Octave, who stands 6'5". He's been able to do a nice job after he was a starter a season ago. I've given you a bit down low, but he's dealing with injuries. He's only been able to get out there for 2 games thus far this season as well. Alabama State, I think, is going to get bludgeoned on the glass. This is a Cincinnati team that does a good job of being able to guard the outside as well. Cincinnati has allowed 60 points or fewer in every one of their games thus far this season. I think that they dominate once again defensively. Did some at 147.5. I do think that Cincinnati going to be able to find some nice open looks, so I'd like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 27 with Cincinnati. 306.599, 306.600. It is Georgia Tech, and they're playing us to Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern does find themselves as an 18.5 point underdog in your total on this game. It is 151.5, and with Charleston Southern, set them as an 18-point dog. Right now, seeing some 18.5 populate as well, so I had an 18.5. I'm willing to take those points with Charleston Southern for Georgia Tech. I do think that they're starting to find their bearings, but they don't necessarily have that go-to guy, unlike a season ago. Nathan George, he's a really nice primary facilitator that is able to give you about 5+ assists per contest, but not going to light you up in terms of the overall offense. I like the fact that they bring back Lance Terry, who he last season for this bunch was just completely out 2 seasons ago. About a 39% 3-point shooter, 10 points per game, so they're able to build off of that. Kwasi Reeves has been able to give you double figures, but just has never really been the most reliable of 3-point shooters. And Javion McCollum, while I like the fact that he gives you 13 points, 3.5 assists, it just feels like he and George really don't mesh as Bate and Ndongo, who's a 6'8", 6'9" big man. He's able to give you a block. He's able to give you 13.5 points, 7.5 boards, really good versatility, and is able to give you a little bit of 3-point shooting as well. Duncan Boom Boom Powell is a bit of a versatile piece at 6'8", but doesn't necessarily do one thing well. And for Charleston Southern, Tajay Kelly has really become a nice low post piece for this team. Not really giving you a lot of size at about 6'5", 6'6", but 14 points, 7.5 boards, mid-30s 3-point shooter. Charleston Southern needs to clean up those 14.5 turnovers per game, but they do have a guy that's capable of helping do so in RJ Johnson, who's been able to give you 4.5 assists, currently shooting well north of 40% from 3 last year, 38.5% 3-point shooter, one of the more underrated guards out there in mid-major college basketball. And for Charleston Southern, they don't necessarily have a ton of depth, but you do have another guy in Anthony Goss, who's able to give you 9 points per game. He's coming as a freshman, and he's really been able to give this team a nice spark. And Lamar Odom Jr., who comes over from Drexel, I think should be able to give you a little bit of scoring as well. So this is one of these circumstances where I'm going to be one thing 18.5 or more with Charleston Southern. And did somebody total at a 146. This is a Georgia Tech team that hasn't been the world's greatest on defense, but Charleston Southern relatively sloppy with the ball. They've been having a tough time getting past 70, and you've got a Georgia Tech team that's struggling a little bit currently with their offense as well. So in on the under and in on the points with Charleston Southern. 306-601, 306-602. It is Northern Arizona and HOU Christian doing battle. No numbers currently up on this game, but with Northern Arizona, I did set them as a road favorite of 4 points, so I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with them, 4.5 for more, taking those points with HOU Christian. Then semi-total where a 142.5 or higher, I'm going to be in on the total under, and a 141.5 or higher, I'm going to be in on the over semi-total at a 142 for Northern Arizona. Less than savory loss yesterday against Eastern Michigan, but they really got it going in the second half, and even though it's a little bit of a back-to-back spot, you got a HOU Christian team that's a host team that is trying to figure out darn near anything as they bring in Coach Doty, who was over at Emporia State a season ago. They were playing a very slow, very controlled style of basketball, and he's been able to instill that here, but he just doesn't have a lot of shooting in general. You've got a collective that is shooting less than 30% from 3-point, just haven't been able to find a whole heck of a lot of anything down low either, as Elijah Brooks is right now leading the way with 4.5 boards per game. He comes in from North Dakota, and he's been able to give you about 9 points per game, so he's been able to give you a little bit of something there, but has made as many threes as myself. Bryson Dawkins, he's right now the primary scorer, being able to supply 12 points, shooting 32% from 3-point, but Carson Tout, who he comes in after missing all of last season due to injury, he's a nice, versatile, 6'7", do-it-all player that's able to give you 9 9+ rebounds per game. He's giving you 3 assists, a double-figure amount of points per game. Not really a guy that's going to shoot from three-point range, but you've got that and so much more in Trent McLaughlin. He's averaging north of 22 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. Oakland Ford has struggled a little bit with his shot, but he's able to give you some nice outside shooting, and Jaden Jackson has been able to come on very strong as well, being able to give the team 12 points, north of 4 boards per contest. He's able to give you a bit of facilitation as well, so he's been able to dole out darn near 3 assists per contest as well. It's a Northern Arizona team that, going into yesterday, they were averaging fewer than 10 turnovers per contest. They did have 17 yesterday, but I do think that they're going to be able to clean those up. And you've got a Houston Christian team that, even though they're playing a little bit more slowly, just not necessarily the most disciplined with the ball, with not having a single guy giving north of 2.5 assists per contest. So willing to lay up to 3.5 with Northern Arizona, 4.5 or more, taking those points with Houston Christian. Then 141.5 or less, and on the over 142.5 or higher, the under 306.604, 306.603. It is Maryland Eastern Shore, and they're going to be on the road against Little Rock. Little Rock, a 15.5 to a 16-point favorite, totals between 141.5 to a 142. Battle of teams who just got bludgeoned by Illinois, and I said Little Rock as a 14-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take the north of 15 here with Maryland Eastern Shore. With Maryland Eastern Shore, their last 2 losses very much less than savory, but those are really good power conference teams that they were going up against. And I do think that for Maryland Eastern Shore, you're going to be able to find a little bit in the backcourt. Front court has been a little bit hit or miss, to say the least, but you do have Christopher Flippin, who's been pretty flippin' awesome. He's been able to give the team 7 rebounds per game. And then with regards to this Maryland Eastern Shore backcourt, they have a coach and player tandem that goes all the way back to their days at Winston-Salem State. As Cleo Hill, he was one of the last coaches to get hired in this process. He brought with him Casey Shaw from Winston-Salem. He's been able to give the team 20 points, 3.5 assists per game. Offense has really failed them in the last 2 games. They combined 75 points, but we've also got a Little Rock team that they themselves have hardly scored above 100 points over the last 2 games, as Jonathan Lawson has been pretty rock solid, coming in, being able to give the team 14.5 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. So that's been very important, especially with KK Curry, their top scorer from last season, still being out of the fold for the team. They've had Monway Wilkerson come in from LSU. He's been able to give the team a lot of versatility at 6'5", 15+ points, 6+ boards. He does a nice job of being able to give the team some facilitation as well. It is a Little Rock team that they get a little bit out of sorts with the ball, and for this bunch in Maryland Eastern Shore, it's just been a case where everything has gone wrong for them. Last 2 games, they have been one of the worst teams in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as far this season, and they have combined that with the fact that they just have not been able to score over the last few days as well. So it's a very interesting circumstance, but I do think that Maryland Eastern Shore going to be able to bounce back a little bit more with their offense. Still think that their defense is a bit of a liability, but Little Rock not coming in the world's greatest form either. Did set my line at a 14, so we'll take the 16 points here with the Shore, and did set my total at 150. Both of these teams, I think, are going to be looking to push some tempo, and both of these teams really been giving it up defensively recently. So looking at the over, and I'm willing to take the points with the Shore. 306.605, 306.606. It is St. Louis, and they're going to be playing UMass Lowell. Lowell does find themselves as a underdog of 7.5 to 8 points. The last game is 164 to 164.5. Did set my total a little bit lower than that at 160.5. I'm going to be diving in on the under. Recognize that Robbie Avila is back in the fold for this St. Louis team, but even with him back, I don't think that he's fully at 100%. He had a solid game a few days ago, but wasn't necessarily lighting up tremendously, so I do think that it's going to take him a little bit of time to be able to get his sea legs back. And additionally, you've got Gibson Jimerson, who's been really good in the backcourt for St. Louis. I just feel like he's a really good fit with his shirt style. He's been able to shoot it at north of 40% from 3-point range. He's always been a microwave sort of scorer guy. You've got AJ Casey, who's been dealing with a little bit of an injury as well for the St. Louis team. He was over at Miami to begin his career, so it's been a team that's been a little bit hobbled. Still should be able to do a solid job down low with Kalu Enya, giving you 11 plus rebounds per game. And Kellen Thames has been a nice surprise for this team. He was a reserve for St. Louis a season ago that shot 36% from 3. He's chipping in there 6 boards, nice double-figure amount of points per game with Isaac Swope. Also coming on over with shirts over from Indiana State. He's been able to give the team double figures. But for UMass Lowell, this is a team that last year was in the top 20 nationally in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Hasn't necessarily been that this year. They get sloppy with the ball, 15.5 turnovers per game. They were that way a season ago as well. But Quentin Mincy is giving you 17 points per contest. Yuri Covington is a nice off-the-ball scorer that is able to give you 12.5 points, shooting the mid-30s from 3-point range. But you do have some nice defense down low. Max Brooks, a 2-time all-conference defense selection. He's able to give you 2.5 blocks, 9 boards, 13 points per game. So do like what he's able to bring to the table. And you've got some relatively good versatility with someone like a Cam Morris, 9 points, 4 boards last year, shot 39% from 3-point range. I do think that this is a UMass Lowell team that's going to have their issues in terms of being able to match up with Avila. Don't think that he's 100%, but again, with the St. Louis team, do feel like they're just a little bit more squared away in the backcourt. Swope has been turning the ball over a tab, but that should be coming back into form, I would say, with Robbie Avila coming back, as I do think that for this UMass Lowell team, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time with just all of the overall versatility of St. Louis. So I did set my total. I had a 160.5. I'm in on the under of St. Louis. I set them as an 8.5 point favorite. Wanted to lay up to 8 with them. 306.607, 306.608. Stony is on the road against Marquette. Marquette is a favorite of anywhere between 34 to 34.5 points. Totals between 138 to 138.5. Semi line at 34. So 34.5 is pretty much that drop dead point. I'm willing to lay up to 34 with regards to this Marquette team. With Marquette, they've been in a little bit of transition down low because you lose Oso Ogudero and obviously Tyler Kolek being out has hurt their backcourt as well. But I do feel like Cam Jones doing a really good job of being able to step in, 20.5 points, 6 assists to fewer than 2 turnovers per contest. And for the Stone Hill team, Amir Nesbitt, who comes in from Hampton, he's been actually relatively solid in the backcourt. 7.5 points on 35% three-point shooting, 3.5 assists per contest. Stone Hill has been able to win themselves a few games. They've been nip and tuck games, but one of them was at home against Bryant, so something to be able to build around, but you just still don't necessarily have a ton in terms of this backcourt that has been shooting 38.5% from 3, but they turn the ball over 13 times per contest. Like what they're getting down low out of Todd Bronga. He's a 6'7" big man that's been able to give the team about 7 boards, 13 points per game, so got a little bit of something going on there. Joshua Morgan, the transfer from Encarta Word, has been able to give them 15.5 points, career about 37% three-point shooter, and for Marquette, I do think that they're going to shoot much better moving forward than their 32% from distance. They've been able to take good care of the ball, only about 9 turnovers per game. Chase Ross, Stevie Mitchell, both of these guys giving you about 12.5 points per contest, both shooting north of 45% from three-point range. Ben Gold has 6'10" size. He's able to shoot it from three-point range as well. A little bit of a depth issue with this team. You'd be liking it a little bit more if you could see someone like Izade Lowry be able to step up a little bit more, but I do think that Jones, David Joplin, all these guys just going to take it to a Stone Hill team that's been a team that has really had a tough time guarding the three-point arc ever since they came up to the D1 ranks. They've been able to win a few games recently, but again, playing against Lindenwood, East Texas A&M, that's been really bolstering the record, and I do think that Marquette is going to take out some of their frustrations on a lesser team. So I did set this line at 34.5. I'm willing to lay up to 34 with Marquette, and did set my total at 148.5. They're a good team at being able to generate turnovers, have been one of the best in all of college basketball this season, but I do think that they turn defense and offense here, so like the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Marquette 306.609, 306.610. It is Cal, and they play us a Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst just find themselves as 19 to 19.5 point dogs. Total on this game is 139.5 with Mercyhurst. Set them as a 20.5 point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Cal. Recognize that Cal, the last time they were in a big spread game, they did not necessarily get the job done against Air Force. They did a better job against Sacramento St in terms of their defense, but offense left a little bit of something to be desired as well. But I like the game of Ritus Petratus. He comes in from Air Force. He was averaging for that team pretty much about 12 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, just does a little bit of everything. Had a triple-double in a game against UNLV last season. I like what he's able to bring to the table, but the guy that's able to be really that elevator in the backcourt, Javon Blackshear, has been able to do a nice job, be able to dole off the ball with multiple assists per contest. It's a Cal team that has been looking for a little bit more of that identity, and Blackshear, he's been missing a few games due to injury. I know that BJ Omot has been a guy that's been a little bit in and out of the fold. He's been missing ever since that USC game, so that's been hurting them quite a bit, but DJ Turner Up Campbell, he's another guy that has been able to do a rock-solid job as well. With him being out of the fold as well, it's left Andrei Stojakovic to be that main guy with about 18 points per contest, and for Cal, they should be getting at the very minimum one of these guards back. We shall see which one it's going to be, but you've also got Mandy Sissoko, who's able to dominate down low. He and Lee Dort have been able to give you a combined 13 rebounds per game. That's big against a Mercyhurst team that they really don't have anyone that's bigger than 6'8" Mikolas Ivanuskis, who's been able to give you about 5 boards per contest as a freshman. It's a Mercyhurst team that we just saw them get whopped by north of 30 points against Air Force a few days ago. You've got Joel Planutis, who's able to give you 14 points per game, but it's Mercyhurst team that, despite the fact that they do a nice job being able to control the games, play relatively slowly, they're a good team on defense with generating about 8.5 steals per game, and they only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest, just not a lot in way of shooting. They get plowed on the glass, so even with Cal dealing with a few guards currently being out of the fold, I do think that Cal is going to be able to find a way to get the job done and really be able to get this game cranked a little bit more up-tempo than what Mercyhurst is used to, because this is a Cal team that you just take a look at them and the way that they have been able to just really generate their offense. They've been able to score at least 70 points on the regular all season long. Lone game was when they went up against Vanderbilt. They still got to 69 in that one where they did not. So I do think the Cal going to be able to get this up-tempo style going, even with a few guards being out. I'm willing to lay the number, and I'm going to be in on this total. Over 3-6-6-11, 3-6-6-12. It is Pacific, and they play us Arkansas Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff, a 16.5 to a 17-point underdog. Total this game between 156.5 to a 157.5. Set Pine Bluff as an underdog of 14 points. So circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take the 17 with Pine Bluff. They have been awful on defense. They have been a bottom 5 team, as a matter of fact, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But it is a new look team that is under the tutelage of Dave Smart. And for Dave Smart, he comes over after he was coaching in Canada for quite a while, spent a little bit of time on the Texas Tech coaching staff as an assistant there. That's why you've got Lamar Washington as your main man in the backcourt, and he's been able to do a nice job being able to give the team 7+ assists per contest, but it is a team that's getting a little bit sloppy with the ball in terms of the turnovers, and for this specific unit, I think that it's going to be very important that they just find a little bit of more around Elias Rolfe, who's been able to do a nice job down low, giving the team 17.5 points, 7.5 boards, was very much a star out there in the country of Canada, as he and Elijah Fitcher have been your main 2 double-figure scorers, but just don't have a lot of depth with this team. Jazz Gardner is a 7-footer that's able to give you about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game, but for Arkansas Pine Bluff, Christian Moore out there in the backcourt, he's been able to give the team 12 points, 3.5 assists per contest. Pacific has had a little bit of a tough time guarding the 3-point line, and that's one place where I think that Pine Bluff is going to be looking to eat. They have only been able to give you about 30% 3-point shooting thus far this season, but if you look at the Pine Bluff schedule and who they played, Texas Tech, Incarnate Word, South Florida, Missouri, all these road games, it's been absolutely insane what they've had to go up against. Robert Lewis is able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, probably loses that battle against Rolfe down low, but I think that he's going to be able to maintain his own. I think that the, shall we say, step down in competition, going to be able to help out Pine Bluff in this spot. A Pine Bluff team that's looking to absolutely run it and gun it. So I did set my total at a 160. I'm in on the over, and being able to get the 16.5 to 17, I'm going to be taking a look at the points. And last 2 games are out there in the country of Mexico. 3-6-6-13, 3-6-6-14. Southeast Louisiana is going to be playing against North Dakota. The numbers up on this game. Actually, seeing Southeast Louisiana as a slight underdog to North Dakota, and I would disagree with that. If you're getting that, I would just take Southeast Louisiana on the money line. I set them as a 3-point favorite, so if you're getting them as a dog or anything less than a 2.5 point favorite, I like them. And then set my total to where a 138.5 or less, in on the over 139.5 or higher. The under is for the Southeast Louisiana team. They've done a nice job of just being able to finagle pieces in the backcourt, as they've got Carlos Paez back after he was missing for most of last season. He has always been a guy that's given his team north of 3 assists per contest. As a matter of fact, 5 straight years of it, because he's had now the COVID year at his disposal as well. But I do think that also having Brody Woodbury, who's able to give you about 5 to 6 rebounds per game down low, that's going to be able to help out this team quite a bit. And for North Dakota, I'm just not impressed by anyone not named Trayson Eaglestaff. He's been able to do a nice job coming in, giving the team 15+ points per contest, but Amir Kulojovic, who last year gave the team 8+ rebounds per game, had some really nice versatility, has not been able to give you too much. Mir Panome has been able to give you double figures at 6'4". He's supplying the team with about 6.5 rebounds per game, but Sam Hines, 6'6" big man, who comes on over from South Florida, he's been able to shoot darn near 40% from 3-point range, giving you 14 points per contest. He's really been a guy for Southeast Louisiana that they've been able to lean upon, especially with Jakevion Buckley coming over from Lamar, trying to learn this little bit of a new system. But for the Southeast Louisiana team, doing a nice job holding up defensively. They've been able to surrender fewer than 73 points in now each of their last 3 games, after had a little bit of a rough go against UAB and Mississippi State, 2 relatively up-tempo teams that are just of a high quality in general. North Dakota, meanwhile, they've been able to score their points. They've been able to pour in there at least 70 points in pretty much 3 out of their last 4 games entering into yesterday. So situation, something's got to give, but a little bit of an earlier game, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. I do like this to wear a 138.5 or less, in on the over 139 or half or higher, the under. And like I said, with an initial opener, was looking like I was seeing Southeast Louisiana as an underdog, and if we do get that, I do like them outright on the money line. Then we wrap things up with 306-615, 306-616. It is Gardner Webb, and they're going to be taking on Bethune-Cookman. I am not seeing any sort of numbers out there for this game, but I've got my handicap. I'd be willing to lay up to 6 with Gardner Webb, 7 or more. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bethune-Cookman, and then 144 less in on the over, 145 or higher, the under for this Bethune-Cookman unit. They brought on a lot of last-second transfers in. A lot of these guys have been able to do a pretty rock-solid job for the unit, as they've been able to get Brayon Freeman, who 2 seasons ago over at Rhode Island, he was able to supply that team with 14+ points per contest. He's been able to get going. He's been the main man for this team, being able to give you about 15 or so points per game. Daniel Ruzan, who was over at Weber State 8 seasons ago, he was able to give that team some nice production with about 5 or so rebounds per game. He's been able to fortify things down low, and they go up against a Gardner-Webb team that they hire from within with Jeremy Luther taking over as their new head coach, and he's been able to do a nice job of being able to bring back a lot of the guys that were there a few minutes ago, like a Jermaine Mann, who spent some time over at Vanderbilt. He's been able to give the team about 9 to 10 points per contest. Isaiah Richards should be able to win the battle down low with 8 boards per contest, but you've got Reggie Ward on the flip side for Bethune-Cookman, double-figure scorer, was able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Do like what Anthony Selden is bringing to the table for this Gardner-Webb team as well. He spent last year at Rice. He's come back. He's been able to give this team about 15 points, 4 boards, and right around about 2 blocks per contest as well. But it is a Gardner-Webb team that they're very limited in terms of their overall shooting, and they're turning the ball over about 15.5 times per contest as well. They just have not found that main facilitator, Joel Simmons, the second. He's been giving out about 2.5 assists per contest, but with Bethune-Cookman, G.N.I. Hunt, who was part of that Elite 8 team over at Oregon State a few seasons ago. He's become that main man. Did miss yesterday against North Dakota, or else I would have probably set this line a little bit closer to a 5. It looks like he's probably going to be out of the fold for the team, but with Bethune-Cookman, even with Hunt being out, you still have a guy in Freeman who's able to give you a little bit of facilitation. I don't think that there's going to be a whole heck of a lot there, and I do think that Jesus Calero has only been able to give you about 4.5 points per contest. He's going to be able to elevate after 2 seasons ago when he was over at Campbell. He was a nice double-figure scorer for them. So at a 6 or less, want to lay with Gardner-Webb 7 or more. Taking the points with Bethune-Cookman, 144 or less and on the over, 145 or higher the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Justin Perri over at Chocolate Bets for joining me in last segment. If you do like to hear from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, I have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at JNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire and whatever you'd like here on this podcast via the 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. So I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.